Good afternoon again, everyone. The board has participated in 3 meetings so far today, a special meeting for expulsions and 2 closed sessions. I will now call the workshop of November 3rd to order at 3:03 p.m. Mrs. Bass, please call the roll.
District 1, Barbara McQuinn.
Here.
District 2, Alexandria Ayala.
Here.
District 3, Karen Brill.
Here.
District 4, Erica Whitfield.
Here.
District 5, Frank Barbieri.
Here.
District 6, Marcia Andrews.
Here.
District 7, Deborah Robinson.
We have quorum. All 7 board members are present. Also joining us at the dais is Superintendent Michael Burke, General Counsel Sean Bernard, Inspector General Teresa Michael, Board Clerk Carol Bass, and Board Executive Assistant Tony Limbalata. Senior staff members will join us periodically as directed by the Superintendent. Viewers and listeners can access the meeting today by either watching on Comcast channels 234 and 235, UVerse channel 99, or by using the YouTube link on our webpage at palmbeachschools.org. In the event that the link is interrupted for technical reasons, please switch over to the TV channels. All board meetings are recorded in their entirety and posted on the district website within 24 hours. We also offer a listening-only option, which the public can access by calling 561-357-5900 or toll-free at 1-866-930-7015. The meeting ID is 1561-880-1124 #. This meeting is being transcribed by a closed captioner, so remember to speak at a reasonable pace. Will everyone please stand for the pledge to be led by Superintendent Burke?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Well, good afternoon. Yes, we may have some speakers for this workshop.
Yes, we do.
Let's see.
Okay. Yeah, they are. The School Board of Palm Beach County supports the peaceful assembly of persons to express themselves regarding matters concerning district students, employees, and the community. We warn you, however, that if the actions of any members of the public result in a disturbance, those persons are subject to arrest or other lawful action. Consequently, we urge you to be respectful of all persons who are present on school district property. While you are in attendance here at the board meeting, keep in mind the important safety protocols that the board has in place to conform to COVID-19 safety guidelines and school board policies, which I will review with you now. In an effort to keep all participants and district employees safe, everyone must obey all lawful orders issued by school police, which may include remaining in or moving to a specific area or location, lowering voices for safety reasons, or other safety-related commands. School police have the seating arranged based on security protocols developed by school police. Once you are seated, you are required to remain seated unless you are going to the podium, to the restroom, or are leaving the meeting. If you move your chairs or get out of your seats, school police will enforce those security protocols and has authority to have... In an effort to keep all participants and district employees safe, everyone must obey all lawful orders issued by school police, which may include remaining in... Are we done with the feedback? Okay. Once you are seated, you are required to remain seated unless you are going to the podium, to the restroom, or leaving the meeting. If you move your chairs or get out of your seats, school police will enforce those security protocols and has authority to have you removed from the meeting if those security protocols are breached. Maintain social distancing at all times, remain in the designated areas, and leave the property once your visit is complete. While you're in the boardroom, you must wear a mask that covers both your mouth and nose at all times. School police have the authority to remove any person who violates this directive without further direction from the chair. Public comments must relate to the subject matter for which the speaker has requested to address the board. Pursuant to School Board Policy 1.03 and 2.065, speakers whose comments do not relate to the topic that the speaker indicated, including but not limited to personal insults directed at board members, the superintendent, or district staff, or the mention of any person's candidacy for elected office, are subject to having the microphone turned off and forfeiting the right to speak for the remainder of today's workshops and meetings. The board has sat here courteously listening with civility to public speakers despite many of the speakers acting to the contrary and being discourteous to the board and district staff. This board will not tolerate this kind of behavior. Public speakers must be orderly, behave with civility, refrain from obscene or vulgar conduct, and refrain from using profanity or making statements that tend to incite violence or breach of the peace. No person attending this meeting is to harass any other person in the room. Loud or prolonged applause, cheering, heckling, or jeering is disruptive to the meeting and for those attempting to speak and may result in your removal from the meeting. Please respect these cautionary warnings. Failure to follow the safety protocols and procedures as I have outlined or otherwise disruptive conduct is considered interfering with the expeditious and orderly process of the board meeting and will be considered grounds for removal from the meeting by school police. We will maintain decorum, civility, and the orderly conduct of school board business today. Thank you. Before I hand over the workshop to Superintendent Burke, we will hear from our speakers. As I call your names, please come to the microphone. Please state your name when you get to the microphone and watch the clock. You have 3 minutes. Angelique Contreras, David Bonji, Alana Moneth. Go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you, Board. Hello, my name is Angelique Contreras. I'm here today because I believe we're talking about a couple different things, but the first thing I wanted to speak about, and you've heard before, is Miss Fiona, an 8-year-old student in our Palm Beach County School District.
Ma'am, this is a workshop, first the workshop. You're to speak on policy 5.3213.
Okay, I signed up to speak on all the items that would be speaking.
That's the special meeting that we'll get to after the workshop.
Okay.
Yes, so if you want to speak on 5.3213, you're welcome to do that at this time.
Okay.
Mark, restart the clock for her, please.
Thank you. Okay. Angelique Contreras, District 4. So I'm here to speak about, I guess, we're going to create a new policy outside of the emergency rules. And my understanding is, if I'm wrong, please correct me, that Superintendent Burke is going to have the full authority and power to make whatever rules he wants to make without the school board being a part of that and the public being a part of that. As many of you are aware, and many people that are here showing up time and time again, is that you all are elected officials. We elect you to represent the people in 7 different districts throughout Palm Beach County. And Michael Burke, this is no offense to you, but I think we should have more public engagement. I think it's important that we are able to come to these things, speak at these things, and be a part of policies that are going to be voted on, and that should be done by each individual school board member throughout Palm Beach County, not just the superintendent. It's unfortunate that we now are going to push past the emergency rule that we know you're breaking the law in the first place, and now put in this new policy. We're not sure why you're doing that, but we are going to continue to watch and see what's happening, why this is taking place. We are opposed to it. Superintendent Burke, you shouldn't have the authority. Like I said, you are an appointed employee. You make $300,000 a year, way above the national average of school board superintendents.
Stick to the
and
policy.
our school board should be able to make these decisions on policies, not the superintendent. So I will spare my time and I will come back and speak on the other matters. Thank you.
You're welcome. David Bonji, Alana Moneth. Alexandra Burke, Gregory Tammany, and Karen Holm. Any one of you come up to a microphone. I can see.
Hi, my name is Alexandra Barkovskaya. I just cut my name because it's very difficult to pronounce. I strongly oppose proposed policy 53213 about superintendent authority. My belief, superintendent shouldn't issue any orders mandate regarding children, health, or education by himself. And I'm not talking about only Mr. Buke, who is, I believe, not qualified for this position, which we stated before. He is not a physician and he is not an educator. And now all our children are hostages on his hand. He can do whatever he wants. Plus, how as I mentioned before, he is not elected official. So he is not representing us. And another question I want to ask my elected official, Mr. Burberry. You can use 20 seconds of my time. What was the reason for having special meeting today when it's very difficult to us get there? What is the emergency? Do you want to hide something from parents? Do you want to do it in special meeting at 2, 3 o'clock? We don't know. We stay outside for half an hour and waiting for you to get it under the table? Mr. Burberry and all members, it's not going to work. We know you're solely responsible for harassing our children every day. You should feel our tears, and we cursing your names every day when we saw our children bleeding through nose because of this mask mandate. And now you want another power grab? Do you really think we're that stupid? Why you disrespect us that much? If Mr. Burke is going to make all these unpopular decisions solely, do you think we're not going to understand? You initiate all of this? Mr. What's your name? Burberry, could you please answer me? What is the reason for special meeting? Can you do it for me?
Ma'am, we don't normally interact with the public. I just tell you that we have special meetings on a regular basis because we can't get everything into the meetings at 5 o'clock. So
But
this
if-
is not uncommon, but that's the last comment I'm going to give you. So continue with your time.
Then I demand a town hall meeting when we can ask you question, you answer us. Because now you discourage a lot of parents. We're talking to you, we're crying for you, we're saying our heart is bleeding because we cannot see our children suffering. And you're not answering to us. We need a town hall when I ask you a question and you, my elected official, would tell me, I did it because of that. I demanded. Thank you.
Alana Moneth, Alexander Burke, Gregory Tammany, Karen Holm. State your name, please.
Okay, 1 second.
Go ahead,
All right.
state your name, please.
Yep, good afternoon. My name is Gregory Tammany. I believe I'm in Miss Brill's District 3, but I wouldn't know it from her because she unprofessionally never answers one of my emails. But anyway, that's not why I'm here. I'm here to remind you to advocate for our children on the parents' behalf, not anyone else's. These are not political positions, so when you discuss these protocols and start deliberating on our behalf, I want you to remember your duty is to us, not them. With this in mind, here's my advice. Read between the critical theory lies. Theory is a system of ideas, not facts, to explain something. You are not getting facts. You're getting ideas from flip-flopping, dog-torturing quacks. You made medical decisions based on advice from a psychopath. In my past advice to you, I warned you to practice and prescribe. You practicing and prescribing medical advice without a medical license is a felony. In addition, the Nuremberg Code, by medically mandating these masks, you are violating the voluntary consent of our children. Each parent here who provided you a note to opt out of masks never gave you consent to mask our children. Each one of you, by voting 7-0 to mandate masks, have decided to medically experiment on our children. Another way to say this is you are torturing and punishing our children. When the Nazis medically experimented on humans, again, their free will, they inspired the Nuremberg Code. These doctors and any of their supporters, that's you, have been prosecuted, convicted, and executed for these crimes against the unwilling participants. I want you to consider this when you weigh these communicable disease protocols. I, Greg Tammany, do not give you, the Palm Beach Schools, School Board, or any of its employees consent to medically mandate my children to wear masks, nor do I consent for you to give vaccines at any time in the future to any of my children. Your job is to recognize and report medical issues, not treat them, because you will be liable if you do. Here's why it's you that's liable. You made the call. Motion passes 7-0. While everyone else was still flip-flopping, avoiding this liability, you actually executed medically experimentation on our children against our consent. So I'm just going to skip ahead. We've told you repeatedly we want every one of you to resign because, and this is again me offering you advice, outside advice, you were misinformed. Each one of you were misinformed. It is clear you did this for political reasons. This goes against every bit of your advocacy positions. Thank you.
Alana Monmouth, Alexandra Burke. Karen Holm.
Hi, I'm Karen Holm. I live in District 6. I'm speaking on policy 5.3213. I'm opposed to the policy that creates mandatory restrictions during outbreaks, epidemics, or pandemics, just as I am opposed to your other similar policies. You have no authority to impose this blanket policy of social distancing or masking restrictions or any other type of restriction on our students. If you have no proof of a student being infectious, then you have no business restricting that student. If you do have proof of an infectious student, you may use the existing procedures with the Florida court system to quarantine a student. As a side note, the state of Florida has not issued an official quarantine order for any individual since 1947. So if you are serious, about the spread of any disease, you need to follow the Florida statutes and follow the procedure with the Florida Department of Health for an official quarantine. As Mr. Tammany had just said a moment ago, very eloquently, you have no job to do any of this mandating business. It is not your job to discipline children over these mandatory health protocol things that you make up. It's not your job. In conclusion, please do not ratify policy number 5.3213. Thank you.
Alexander Monmouth, Alexander Burke. Mr. Superintendent doesn't appear they're here. If you'd like to go ahead and start your workshop.
Yes, I'd like to introduce Mr. Jay Bogus and Ms. Vicki Evans-Perret. We're going to go through the 2022-23 school calendar workshop, and then after today's workshop, we intend to bring back a recommendation for the board's action on November 17th. Mr. Bogus?
Thank you, Superintendent. Is this on? Yes, excellent. Thank you, Superintendent Burke, Chairman Barbieri, and School Board. We come before you today to speak to a workshop around the 2022-2023 school calendar. We're going to first start and outline statutory requirements and rules around what the state of Florida has as part of the requirements for a school calendar. First starts with Florida Statute 1001.42, that no school in the state of Florida can start before August 10th each school year. As part of this, the hourly equivalent of 180 days must be a part of that school calendar, and as part of that, 900 hours for a full-time FTE, a full-time equivalency. For the purposes of high school graduation and the requirements around that, full-time credit has to be 135 hours of bona fide instruction, and there are accelerated options as part, but the key piece being the 135 bona fide credit. No salary payment shall be issued prior to or in advance of service being rendered. We're not looking for payroll gaps. That's not in anyone's best interest, and as a result, that is part of not only statute but best practice. And lastly, the statute around the board may authorize a maximum of 6 paid legal holidays, as you will see reflected within this calendar, or the 2 proposals for today. As part of this process, dating all the way back to December of 2020, working with all of our bargaining units from CTA, SEIU, and ASOP. As reflected in the bargaining provisions, teachers are guaranteed 196 duty days with 6 paid holidays per the CBA. SEIU, reflecting bus drivers and attendants, are guaranteed 182 duty days, no paid holidays. Paid holidays are only for the 12-month employees per the CBA. And the ASOP unit, paid holidays are for the full-time 12-month employees under their bargaining agreement. Just highlighting a handful of our general calendar concerns. We have this conversation annually, and as a result, there are themes that continuously come up. There are tension points and priorities that do compete against each other, and in doing so, that came out as part of the conversation and is reflected in today's two proposals being presented. The first of these is the first day of school for students. Traditionally speaking, it's the second week in August, plus or minus, and we've got a historical perspective slide that will reflect some of those dates over the last 2 decades. As part of that, as a best practice here in Palm Beach, we've had that teachers begin a week earlier. That's part of preparation and really ensures success on that first day of school. As part of another best practice, duty and PDD after each marking period. So you'll see as part of these proposals, after each marking period, we have reflected a duty and PD day. Again, hearing from our school leaders and teachers, this really provides opportunity not only for PDD, but also the grading and preparation. Holidays that are on our calendars for students and teachers. Labor Day, we have 2 fall holidays, Thanksgiving break, winter break, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. birthday, spring break, spring holiday, and Memorial Day. Here are the special considerations that were taken into as part of the considerations. Always looking at elections and primaries. When we look at 2023 school year, we do have a general election. So that was a competing interest that had to be balanced. Veterans Day is represented on non-election years, and that we're very cognizant and mindful of the maintaining of a hurricane buffer, most active, as we know, mid-August through mid-October. First semester exams are prior to winter break, or certainly trying to. We're seeing that that's a strong instructional practice that both our school leaders and teachers appreciate. Attempt a 90 days in the first semester, and of course, trying our best to avoid a payroll gap. Highlighting Proposal 1 for our board today. It represents a 180-day calendar starting August 10th, which is the second Wednesday, and the proposed end date for this is May 26th. As we stated, it's we try to maintain a 90-90 split between first and second semester. This one starts with 85 days first semester and 95 days in the second semester. Paid holidays for 12-month employees are 4th of July, Labor Day, Thanksgiving, Christmas, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday, and Memorial Day. Paid holidays for teachers, Labor Day, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, Martin Luther King, and Memorial Day. I can highlight the special challenges specific to this proposal, and it's August 23rd is a primary for next year. Currently, the day is off for students, and again, that's something that we've traditionally done in years past. Students off on November 8th. That is the general election day. That's the governor's race, but also that is the same week as Veterans Day, and we are not proposing the idea that students would have off for Veterans Day as well. Again, I highlighted the idea that it's difficult to maintain a 90-90 split, and in this version, it is a 85-95 split for first semester and second semester. Some highlights that come with this calendar, specifically September 26th and October 5th, represent Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Also looking at December as the start to the winter break would begin on December 22nd, and students would come back January 3rd for that winter break. As we stated, it concludes May 26th, and you'll see on May 30th, that is that duty PD day to wrap everything up. Proposal 2 coming to you. Again, the calendar committee has met back in December 2022, or 2020, for the 2022-2023 calendar. This proposal brings the idea that the start date would begin on August 15th and end June 2nd. This is a 179-day calendar, but still reflecting more than enough equivalent hours to suffice for the statute. Proposed first semester is 90 days. However, as part of that, it would end after winter break. So we'll talk a little bit more in that in a second. But the proposed second semester is 89 days, and the end date for this is June 2nd. Similar to Proposal 1, the same calendar or same employees' paid holidays are reflected in 4th of July, Labor Day, Thanksgiving, Christmas, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday, and Memorial Day. Paid holidays for teachers, Labor Day, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, Martin Luther King, and Memorial Day. Challenges are still represented around August 23rd in the primaries. We're having students off. Students off on November 8th for the general election. Again, the competing interest with Veterans Day. And the special challenge here is that this proposal would end first semester after the winter break. Again, that's a carryover of almost 2 weeks from first semester and then coming back for finals after the winter break. Again, highlighting Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah, the ideas around duty and PDD day with our semesters and our trimesters. The one thing I do want to reflect on this particular piece is that rather than coming back January, there's 2 additional days, January 2nd and January 3rd for students that are off. And then there's a full week. Finals would conclude the 12th and 13th, and then a new semester begins January 18th. Finally, end date is reflected as June 2nd, as earlier stated. Last slide we have for you during this calendar workshop is kind of a historical perspective slide. Provides the board an opportunity to see where we've been over the course of almost the last 2 decades, and kind of showing we've always been right around that second week of August. As we said, start dates in between the 10th or the 15th are very common. The latest we've ever started in Palm Beach, all the way back to the 2003 year, is August 22nd, and that was back in 2011-2012 school year. And we've also got potential proposed ideas around start dates for the upcoming years. But again, that's not necessarily part of today's workshop, but giving you kind of a taste or flavor of where we've been and the potential for future. Mr. Burke, that concludes at this time the workshop, and take any questions.
Thank you.
Vice Chairwoman Brill.
Thank you, and thank you for taking the time to meet with me. So I do want to share what we discussed and add a little to it. To my colleagues on the board, I'm sure you're not going to be surprised. I will not vote for either calendar because I still believe that the start date is too early. I thought we had reached somewhat of an agreement that we wouldn't start before the 22nd, which is the second to last Monday in August. I don't expect that you'll bring that back, but I have 2 other concerns with both calendars. The first concern is Veterans Day. We've gone through this year after year. I think it's very disrespectful to the people who have served our country to not have off for that day. So I cannot support a calendar that does not have us off on Veterans Day. The other issue that came up with talking to my community, we've received some emails with regard to it. I've spoken to several people, is the concern about the winter break and Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving, working families are finding it very difficult that we're shut down for the whole week. And the families that have spoken to me, the teachers, more teachers than parents, spoke to me about the winter holiday, wanting 2 full weeks. If you bring back yet another version, Proposal 3, if there's any support for it, I would suggest taking 3 days from that Thanksgiving week and adding it on to the front end of the winter break to allow for 2 weeks off for the winter holidays. But again, I appreciate your efforts, but I will have to vote down these 2 calendars.
Mrs. Whitfield and Ms. Ayala.
Thank you. First of all, I want to just say I know how difficult this is to do. It's, square peg, round hole every time. We are always trying to start later and fit in 85 days before we get to Christmas. So first of all, a huge thank you to the calendar committee who does this job every year and to staff who supports them. I'm going to support calendar 1. My main reason is just going to be because our CTA asked for it. In the past, our principals have also asked for it. I feel like it is very important that we get through testing before we go away on the Christmas holidays, because our number one important challenge is really educating students. And so if they have 2 weeks off and they're not paying attention to their work, I think our grades will go down. And that, to me, when we look at what we're doing, is just, it's the whole reason we're here. So I want to focus on that. The other thing I really wanted to mention, first of all, never take away the Thanksgiving week. That is so important to me. I think it's the best thing we've ever done. I think it does a lot for our staff to have a full week off. It is a marketing tool for us to be able to say in a time when our employees may not want to work for the school district, this is a benefit that you get. So I think we have to really remember that, and how many people we were able to pick up from other school districts when we did go to having that whole week off at Thanksgiving. Finally, I noticed when we were talking about SEIU and their bargaining as we go forward with that they never get paid for paid holidays. So I know this isn't the appropriate location for it to talk about this, but I just want to mention as we go forward, and since this is a workshop, please think about how we pay those employees for those 6 days, because I think, we take those days off, they have no choice to work those days. So we really have to think about how we keep them whole during that time. Thank you.
Ms. Ayala?
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. And I'd like to also thank the calendar committee and everyone at the table for this monumental task. I know it's challenging. One, I'd like to put out there the idea of exploring, looking at calendars done 2 or 3 years out. I would like to have some more planning than doing this every year and going through these arduous back and forth with timing and where holidays fall and whatnot. Second, I would like to reiterate one of my colleagues' comments. I have heard from some constituents that they would prefer a solid winter break as opposed to the Thanksgiving week. I think that there's only so many days in a year, so they need to come from somewhere. And the entire rest of the business community in the world functions in a world where the things are open. During Thanksgiving week, folks are at work. So I think there's a way to make that work. I'd like to see exploring an option that includes that option so that for the winter travel, they have continuous days that they know they can be where they need to be. But other than that, I do support kind of using one as the baseline, given that that was the recommendation from the committee and the work that went in. Thank you.
Mrs. Andrews?
Thank you. Right off, I'm going to be supporting option one, and I've seen it all different ways, and I just know there's so many children that need to get back to school because we're still in this pandemic, and there's so much unfinished learning that the children need. So when I saw us actually getting back early, it was so important for me to get them back in school. So that was very important to me. I thank the calendar committee for all of your work. And it's represented by all of the people that just really do the work here in the school district of Palm Beach County, our teachers, our unions, everybody. The leaders are there and giving this input. And I just know that we've had this discussion over and over and over, especially last year, and we were worried about the pay gaps. We've got to make sure we don't do something that's going to cause somebody to lose money. So we've been hashing this out from year after year. I think I've got to kind of just make a decision this time to go with one because this is what the people have said, and these are the people that are doing the work, and they feel comfortable with this. I love Veterans Day. I hate to lose it. I've been fighting for years to have it, but I know we have the general election that's coming. That's a big deal. I've seen the supervisor of election here talking to the superintendent, talking to us about making sure that we have a time where everybody's going to be safe in these buildings where you've got all the community and everybody voting. So we've got to make sure that we can work together to make sure it's a safety issue for all of the folks coming within our school district to participate in our election process. So I'm willing to give it up, but I think on those non-election years, I want to go back to my fight for Veterans Day, and I think we have done it on those non-election years. So I'm going to support option one, and a lot of that is that the extra time is going to help us with the students and getting them back to school as much as possible. And I do like that solid block for getting everything completed before the holidays. I just remembered it when it was the other way too, and I can almost live with either way, but I always want to listen to those that have to participate in that process, that work that process each and every day. And why do we have a calendar committee if we're not going to really work with them and listen to them and work it out? One of the things we said last year is that why can't we get to the legislature and make some changes. You know, we're following the Florida statute. It tells us we have to do certain things and we can't start before a certain time and so on and so on. So we need to kind of think about how we may be able to make some changes through the legislative process. But I will be supporting option 1.
Dr. Robinson?
Thank you. I will also support option 1. I mean, the calendar is just a no-win situation. There's just no way that you can do everything that we want done, right? And just to follow up on some of the comments of my colleagues, I think Mrs. Andrews outlined some of the details very well. I really do like the idea of paying SEIU for the holidays, okay? Even though that's not appropriate right in this space, but I agree that that's something we should look into. And I remember very clearly the change in the atmosphere the year that we made the Thanksgiving week a whole week. And it was such a positive a positive thing for all staff. I realized that that it's not the easiest thing for parents, but when I was a working parent, it didn't matter when school was closed. It was always an issue. Like, I always had to make arrangements, right? So maybe we continue to work with some of our municipal and county partners, or maybe we even use some of that time for parents who want their children to get some additional small group instruction if the teachers, if we have teachers who are available and willing to do so. So so I'm gonna support 1, knowing that it's not perfect, but it's a lot of time and energy has been put into evaluating all these competing interests, and I will honor that work. Thank you.
Any other comments? I too will support option 1. I appreciate the employees wanting to have a solid 2 weeks off during the winter break so that they can fly away to visit family around the country, and I get it, but when you look at the calendar, that would mean we'd have to shorten the first semester by 3 more days in order to do that, and there's just no room in the calendar to do that and still meet the requirements to get the children educated. The other thing I'd like to follow up on Ms. Ayala, we've discussed this over and over again. Mr. Superintendent, obviously you're new to this position, but we need to bring back multiple year calendars because we do go through this every single year, and it's like, while the calendar committee's meeting, they might as well meet on, several years at a time and bring us three calendars so we have some time. And I agree also that we should always try and get Veterans Day off when we can, but in election years, during election years, we need to make sure that that we have the children out of the schools when the voters are in the building. So I understand why we couldn't do it this year, but if you could try and get the calendar committee to work with us and bring us back more than one year, it would be great.
Yes, I'd like to see that myself. I think it helps families with planning that may have a big trip coming out, in the out year. That would be a benefit for staff to have to do this less frequently because it is always kind of an arduous task. So if we could go ahead and knock out a couple of 2 or 3 years, I think that would benefit everyone. All right, well, I think we've answered your questions. We've got your feedback. I'm sorry, Dr. Robinson.
No, so I was being rude and getting in trouble like I did in school. Because I was trying to remember why we stopped doing. We used to always do multiple years, and so I don't remember what happened. But if somebody could just refresh, I do agree we should go back to multiple years, but we used to, and I don't know what happened. I don't recall what happened.
We did. I have a recollection, but I think I'm going to turn to the expert, make sure my memory's not fuzzy. Ms. Evans-Pray.
We brought this calendar 2022-23 back in 2020, and the board said they only wanted to see one. So that's why we brought one at a time. So that was why we stopped bringing multiples.
I think we had a particularly challenging year where we were having trouble trying to meet all the different demands that are placed on the calendar. So we cut our losses and just said, let's get 1 year done. Okay. But we'll forge ahead with trying to do multiple years.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. So we'll have a change into the team here. Our next workshop is policy 5.3213, control of communicable diseases, including respiratory viruses among students during an outbreak, epidemic, or pandemic. This will be led by Mr. Keith Oswald, Chief of Equity and Wellness, and Lisa Carmona, Esquire, Senior Academics Attorney. So, Mr. Oswald, we'll give you a minute there to pull up your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Burke. And good afternoon, board members. Yes, this is proposed policy 5.3213, control of communicable diseases, including respiratory viruses among students during an outbreak, epidemic, or pandemic. So we're bringing this policy forward, and if it goes through development and adoption, this would rescind current policy 5.326, as well as emergency policy 5.3261 would also expire. This would allow us as a school district to operate our schools during an event of an outbreak or epidemic or pandemic of a communicable disease. This policy goes through a number of different definitions, including communicable disease, which is a disease caused by transmission of virus or bacteria, either directly or indirectly as defined by Florida statute. It also goes through definition of respiratory virus, and then the differences between an outbreak, an epidemic, and I think we all know the definition of a pandemic. There will be a number of responsibilities for students and families under this policy, including but not limited to that if they are ill, not to come to school. And we do list out a number of symptoms. Comply with all directives that would be issued regarding health and safety on a school campus. Informing and communicating with the school nurse or the school principal immediately if they are diagnosed with a communicable disease, and we do list a number of examples that may include, and then to make any arrangements to pick up any child who may be sick upon notification from the school nurse and to take them home. Under the superintendent's authority, there would be an allowance for the superintendent to issue directives that could change a number of programmatic issues, as well as in particular mitigation and prevention strategies, again, to operate schools as normal as possible. And we do list out a number of what those might be. In addition, the superintendent may temporarily suspend or reinstate any portions of the policy, and the school board would be informed of those directives at the following workshop or school board meeting about those particular changes, should that need happen. School principals would also have a responsibility to follow any directives that are issued under this particular policy during, again, outbreak, epidemic, or pandemic, in addition to follow School Board Policy 5.322, which is students with chronic illness and infectious disease, which addresses medical coordination and infection control. Under this particular policy, as we always do, we would work in a variety of different strategies to inform our community of any directives and changes that would occur, whether it's in a small A school or whether it's a larger number of schools or district-wide through our communications team and other processes. Also, students would be required to follow the directives that are given under this particular policy, depending on the situation. Failure to comply with these directives, students would be disciplined as outlined in the Student Code of Conduct. We plan on bringing this forward to the board for development in December and adoption in January. At this time, Superintendent, I'll turn it back over to you for any questions.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Oswald. And I just want to point out, the policy, as Mr. Oswald explained, it does grant the superintendent authority to take action when needed in order for this district to be nimble. We see what it takes to workshop, develop, and adopt a policy. But it also has the language that we discussed earlier through some of our emergency policies, where it puts the onus on the superintendent to immediately get back to the school board, share what action was taken, gather the board's input, and adjust and move forward as needed based on that input. So that's kind of the trade-off to address some of the concerns we've heard as we've gone throughout the pandemic. I will always use that authority, with judiciously and not in a vacuum, and just trying to keep everyone aware as we confront whatever challenges may lay ahead.
Ms. Whitfield?
Thank you. Mr. Burke, I'm so glad you said that, because that's actually exactly what I wanted to talk about. I feel like many times people come to speak at these meetings and they feel we don't hear them, so I wanted to respond on this item. To me, I have never felt like I have passed along my responsibility. I have just made it easier for this district to work. So I speak to the superintendent. I meet with him for an hour every Tuesday, and I speak to him every Friday afternoon. So twice during the week, I'm getting to have input and understand what's going on throughout the district. And so I don't feel that I've ever handed over power, but I do think that this board moves very slowly when it comes to implementing policy change. So slowly that we wouldn't have been able to react to this pandemic in the way that we've been able to. So I'm happy to support this policy. I'm happy that we're going forward with this policy. I think it makes a lot of sense when something is so quickly changing that we're able to be reactive. And so I thank the superintendent for taking on this work. And if ever there's a point where we don't feel he's representing us, we always have the opportunity to take that back. So until that day, I'm very glad that we're still carrying on this way. Thank you.
Dr. Robinson?
Well, so first I want to just address the issue of the superintendent's authority just a wee bit. And that is, I'm quite comfortable with this because of the need to be nimble, but also because of who the superintendent is. I can promise you if we had a superintendent that I had less confidence in, I would probably feel differently, to be honest. And so, and policy, though, should not be based upon the individual, but in the face of coming out of this pandemic, I'm okay with this. But I would ask legal, and I'm really not clear exactly what I'm requesting in a way, but if you could have a list of authorities that the board has granted to the superintendent that are not codified in law, so that we can kind of see in a way what we've delegated. Okay, so that's that. But now back to the medical part of this policy. This policy bothers me because I think it has some incorrect language in it. So the first thing is, it's very clear to me that this policy was written based on respiratory transmission of viruses, and then we acknowledge that communicable diseases are sometimes bacteria. But there's many other entities that can cause a communicable disease, so the definition bothers me. So it says any disease caused by transmission of a virus or bacteria, either directly or indirectly. There's other modes of transmission too. So I would ask that we change that to, and I know this is on the agenda later for us to vote on. No, it's not on this. Okay, so let me just add my 2 cents then. So to say any disease caused by transmission of an infectious agent, and I wouldn't even say directly or indirectly, and then it may be spread through. And if you're going to list direct or close contact, or sneezing, coughing, and speaking, then we might, I don't know if we want to list the other mechanisms of transmission, right? So it bothers me that this is inaccurate. I get that these are the most common agents and the most common methods of transmission in school, but it's inaccurate. And so I would ask for us to revise that. The other thing is in line 27, they're talking about outbreaks transmitted by casual contact or respiratory or airborne manner. Same thing. Just communicable diseases can be transmitted other ways. If the point here is to talk about epidemics and pandemics, well, okay, I'll live, because I'm not aware of epidemics of scabies, for example, but it's just technically inaccurate. Then I want to go to line 43, which is, and this is a Scribner's deal, so it says loss of appetite and sense of smell. So it really should read loss of appetite, comma, loss of sense of smell, and other flu-like symptoms. And then when we go to line 48, and again, I'm nitpicking and I acknowledge that, but H1N1, it looks like it's H1N1, comma, influenza. H1N1 is a subtype of influenza A, right? So you could say influenza, including H1N1, if you want to talk, if you feel the need to mention H1N1. But I just would like for those things to be technically correct. And then the other things that we expect as parents notification of, I don't know if they should be listed here. I guess it's just a judgment call whether we list stuff like scabies and impetigo and lice and all those, because they're communicable diseases. They're not viral. They're not, And so it's just really, if we really just want to talk about respiratory viruses, or if we want to talk about communicable diseases. So we can't, to me, can't have it both ways. So, thank you.
I have a question for you to follow up on Dr. Robinson's. On line 10 and 11, Dr. Robinson indicated that virus or bacteria should be include some other transmissible type whatever in addition to virus and bacteria, but it also cites to Florida Statute 381.003. So whatever you change you made in line 10, you're going to have to make sure that it's also included in that statute. So we just can't add things there and then say it's as referenced in the statute if it's not referenced. So we'd make sure we do that. And then with respect to superintendent's authority, like Dr. Robinson, I mean, if we had a different superintendent, I may have a different position on this, but we could have a period of time where several weeks go by between one meeting and the next. This policy says that the superintendent's to notify us at the next scheduled workshop or meeting. That could be weeks. Can we put a provision in here that the superintendent will notify the board members within 24 hours or 48 hours, whatever is reasonable, of his decision to change something that he feels is important enough to exercise his authority under this policy, so that we have notice almost immediately that he's exercising his authority. We can certainly voice our opinion when he calls us on the phone with respect to that, but obviously we know that he's not allowed to poll the board and ask us if we agree, but I think he would quickly get a sense if we didn't feel that what he did was right. He might want to change his position on that, but those are my two comments. Mrs. Andrews, then Dr. Robinson, or Mrs. Andrews, then Ms. Brill.
And thank you. And I look at lines 23 all the way to 39. It is much tighter than it was before. It was something that I talked about over and over. And I thank you, Mr. Burke, because you do communicate absolutely fabulously with me and the rest of this board several times during the week or whenever is needed. So I like that piece that you're saying, Mr. Barbieri, but when I read this, it's tight now, and this kind of lines up with what most districts do across the state of Florida. So, I mean, this was a little not as tight before, but now under this, Mr. Oswald, you all got it. Legal, you got it. So I like this a lot, and thank you, Mr. Burke, for really being on target and making sure you keep our children safe and keeping us informed. And guess what? We are the school board, and we can make the changes if we need it. It's all about communications and working together. Thank you.
Ms. Brill, then Mrs. Whitfield.
Thank you. So I'm going to chime in also on the lines regarding the superintendent's authority. So I just want the public to make no mistake. We do take control of what's going on in this district and responsibility. But as Mr. Barbieri said, there are times when we are not meeting, where we have to be nimble, and I do trust Mr. Burke, but a perfect example of the board taking its authority over is my discussion item later. So we are going to have a discussion item which may impact what we're doing. So I think that we always have that option. Mr. Burke and I meet once a week on Tuesdays, just as he does with Mrs. Whitfield. We speak on Fridays. We speak in between. We spoke this morning. We speak constantly. So I feel very confident and comfortable with the language, because I do know that he listens and that he makes sure that he's following the guidance that the board gives him.
Mrs. Andrews. I'm sorry, Mrs. Whitfield, then Mrs. Andrews.
I just wanted to talk a little bit about Dr. Robinson's comments about communicable disease. I think she makes a very good point that we are tying it to one specific way of communicating diseases. So I'm wondering if we can go back, obviously it's a workshop, so we can go back and maybe just in lines 11 and 12 on the redlined version. I was thinking we could just take out that part about may be transmitted through sneezing, coughing, and speaking, because there's so many ways to transmit a virus and a bacteria and all those things that may end up becoming a reason why we have to enact this policy. So that's just the first one I saw from what she talked about, but maybe we'll have people come back and actually go through and just fix that. Because I do think I would like it to say communicable diseases, because I think what we're in is a moment in time with one specific disease, and to go forward with this policy, we really have to make it so that we're ready for whatever's coming out after this. Hopefully nothing, but we have to be ready for that.
So what you're suggesting is that they remove the second sentence starting on 11 and finishing on 13?
Yeah, so it says may be transmitted through sneezing, coughing, and speaking, because otherwise we'd have to be all-encompassing and add in all the other ways that you can transmit a disease. So I think we should just take out anything that's very specific to respiratory diseases and just make it broader. And you guys can go back and look at that too, but I think I like the broader concept just to support Dr. Robinson's comments.
Okay, just want to make sure Mr. Oswald got that information.
Yes, we'll
I
review
think
all that feedback.
Mrs. Andrews, then Mrs. McQuinn are next.
Thank you. And just a note for the public, even before Mr. Burke and when we had the policy before, as a board, we actually had much discussion about changes to the policy once it was laid out by the superintendent. And we made quite a few changes sitting right up in here together about things that we knew we needed to make the final decision on. So we did a lot of that. I think now the words fit everything that we're doing and saying, but we did it anyway because we made a lot of changes, as I recall, to help improve things once we saw that we needed to do it as a board.
Mr. Burke, did you have a comment before Mrs. McQuinn you wanted to make?
Oh, no, sir.
Okay, Mrs. McQuinn?
Following up with Ms. Whitfield and Dr. Robinson regarding lines 11 through 13, I always prefer that we eliminate words that don't come directly from statute. So when we added those lines, I think we left it open to misinterpretation. So I would just leave statutory language, which then, so for example, going down to line 18 with D, okay, that's a definition, that's great. The same thing with E regarding the definition for pandemic. Even C, what an outbreak is. But if I go back to B, I would like just to make sure that we are, that we're very specific in B, that we're very specific in how it's defined. If it's not specific, then it's always my preference to leave it out. Thank you.
Any other comments? Mr. Superintendent?
Well, thank you. You know, this is the workshop, of course, so we appreciate the board's feedback. We'll get a chance to go back and try to update this, reflect your recommendations, and we'll be back for development or for the first read. Mr. Oswald will also be probably working to prepare for his MCAT exam. He's going to get a little more familiar, I think, with all the various types of diseases out there. So thank you, team. Thank you, Ms. Carmona. Concludes the workshops.
So just one more comment. So I finally pulled up the statute that's referenced, and because I was really concerned that the legislature didn't understand what a communicable disease was. Anyway, so it says the department, okay, a communicable disease is any disease caused by transmission of a specific infectious agent or its toxic products from an infected person, an infected animal, or the environment to a susceptible host, either directly or indirectly. The communicable disease program must include that. That's the definition. Like, so I'm good if we like cut and paste that definition. So.
Okay, thanks. Any other comments? We need a motion to adjourn the workshops. Motion by Mrs. Whitfield, second by Dr. Robinson. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. All right, that'll take us to the special meeting. We'll let the record reflect we still have a quorum with all 7 board members in attendance. There are no minutes to review. We have no items to add for good cause. Mr. Superintendent, are you withdrawing anything?
No, sir.
Board members, we have one item that's pulled, L1. Does anyone wish to pull anything else? Good. Dr. Robinson?
P3.
P3? Did you say P3? Yep. P3, job descriptions. Anybody else? All right. With those two changes, we need a motion to approve the agenda. Motion by Mrs. Whitfield, seconded by Ms. Ayala. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Any disclosures or abstentions? Seeing none, Mr. Superintendent.
Yes, I do have some comments. They're a little bit lengthy, so please bear with me. But we have a full agenda for today's meeting. I'm excited to bring two agenda items that will enable us to provide a $1,000 bonus to all remaining full-time employees that were excluded from the governor's disaster relief payments. I know this is a priority of the board to recognize the extraordinary contributions of all employees over the past year. And with the board's approval this evening, we'll be able to issue all the remaining checks before the winter break. Our team has also continue to closely monitor our local health conditions in the community and our schools. Earlier today, Mr. Oswald and I met with our medical advisors, and I'd like to share a few slides from that conversation to help illustrate where we currently stand and how this is going to impact my thought process and my intent as we move forward. So our first slide here is the CDC, transmission risk kind of calculator, right? And there's the 4 levels, which we're probably all getting pretty familiar with them, of low, moderate, substantial, and high. And you may recall in early October, we established metrics that we wanted to achieve the moderate level of transmission. So that means that to get to the moderate level, you have to be below 50 cases per 100,000 over a 7-day period. And also your positivity rate in the community has to be less than 8%. So we've made progress in these areas. And let's go ahead and move forward, Mr. Murray. I wanted to go back and just kind of remind us of what we've lived through. We first in June we had a reopening plan that basically said face coverings would be optional. We were looking for the greatest return to normalcy possible. Then the Delta variant hit. We opened schools with we did have a parent opt-out when we opened schools on the first day on August 10th. Then by the second week of school, the Delta variant was wreaking havoc on our community and our schools. You can see by this chart, at that point, we had over 622 cases per 100,000, which is way, way off the chart of the CDC, right? The positivity rate was at 17.9%, and we were sending home over 4,000 students on any given day due to either COVID cases or COVID exposures. So at that point, the board made the very responsible decision to, look, we need to err on the side of safety, try to protect students and community, and we rescinded that parent opt-out provision. Now, fortunately, because I think our community has taken this seriously and our own measures, along with all the other mitigation measures, we've seen dramatic improvement. And if you follow this along, it's a nice steady path downward to October 28th, which was last Friday. And you'll see there on the far right, I hope you can read it, but that's, as of last Friday, we had 59.1 cases per 100,000. So we were just over that 50 bar, right, that we want to get below. And then the positivity rate had hit 3%, which is well below our 8% requirement. So this, prompted a lot of conversation. I want to, there was also, Mr. Murray, could you jump back to that first slide, please, with the metrics? There's one that's really not on the page, right? Because our third metric was that the availability of a vaccine for children aged 5 to 11. And the great news today is that has now happened. And with our healthcare district, we are going to have that available tomorrow. We'll have the mobile healthcare unit in our parking lot here at the district office, and then we're going to start working to have the unit traveling to our schools. Again, the vaccine is not a requirement. There's no mandate for students or employees, but we feel we are very fortunate to now have that available, and it alters the landscape on our efforts to help, hopefully eradicate this pandemic. So that is one metric that you can cross off the list. You can also cross off the positivity rate. We have been below 8% for 4 weeks. So that leaves us, I guess, with the toughest metric to meet, and that's that cases per 100,000, where we're at 59. Today in the Palm Beach Post, I noticed that the county government has now adopted metrics, and they've chosen the same 2 metrics as the school district, with the positivity rate and the cases per 100,000, and they're also looking to get to that moderate level. The difference between the county and the school district was the county is looking to achieve those metrics for 2 weeks, where our doctor's preference and what we had brought forward back in October was to sustain the metrics for 4 weeks. Now, as part of our conversation with the doctors this morning, I'll just be real up front. I approached them and said, look, the county's looking at 2 weeks. We are anxious to try to get back to as much normalcy as possible. Would the doctors consider maybe shortening that sustainability period down to 2 weeks? And obviously, as doctors, if it was completely up to their preference, they would probably stick with the 4 weeks. But they were amenable, and they agreed that they could support the 2 weeks. So that leaves us with, this Friday we'll get the report for this week. I'm pretty confident we're going to get below 50 because we've been dropping steadily. And then we would just have to keep that till November 12th, and we will have hit a 2-week period. I understand that the community has, they've worked with us. People want to have answers. They want to know what to plan for. And I feel confident enough tonight, based on our conditions and how things are trending, that I will go ahead and announce that's my full intent, that once we get past the November 12th, that following Monday, November 15th, we will reinstate the parent opt-out. So that will allow any parents that have previously turned in their note to opt their student out of the facial covering requirement, that will be honored. Any families out there that wish to now take advantage of the opt-out, they can turn in a note as we did earlier in the year, and that will be honored. That said, we are going to continue to monitor the health conditions. If there's a dramatic, unforeseen turn of events in the next 2 weeks, I may have to once again rescind this intent, but I don't think that's likely. But even beyond November 15th, we are going to continue to monitor the conditions. We are all hopeful that we've seen the worst of this, but with the history of this COVID-19 virus and pandemics in general, you can never rule them out from cycling back. So we will always try to do what's right to keep people safe. But I wanted to share that news tonight. I understand the board has a discussion item, and I felt it was important. I know this has been front and center on many of our minds, and I wanted to share what my intent and what I had planned to do under my authority. Of course, I'll welcome the board's input this evening. And then lastly, I know we've talked about students and how we'll handle that. I want to clarify that opt-out would be across all levels, elementary, middle, and high. And then when it comes to employees, I'd like to take a few days to work with our union leaders, our employee group leaders, and establish what those protocols may look like. So I'm not prepared to fully give you the proposal on employees. We have a little time to work with. Obviously, the requirement remains in place through November 12th, but then on November 15th, we look forward to offering a little latitude to our families. And then finally, I'll just say, look, even when we started the year with the opt-out, masks were required if you didn't have the opt-out, right? So we are still strongly encouraging families, children, employees to wear a mask or face covering. We believe it is a valuable tool to mitigate the spread. Given the milestones we've reached here to improve, the health conditions, we're going to loosen up a little bit and allow that opt-out. But if families or students want to wear the mask, they're welcome to do so. We still strongly encourage it, and we want to do everything we can to keep our employees, our students, our community safe, and keep our schools open and running each day. All right, well, that concludes my remarks, Chairman Barbier. I just wanted to get that on the table before the board has a discussion later this evening.
All right, I'll call on board member comments, but please understand that rather than discussing what the superintendent just said, there is a discussion item on later. Let's hold that discussion for later, because remember, during board discussion comments, you only have 4 minutes, and I'm sure some of you have things to say that are probably going to take a little longer than that. So, Ms. McQuinn, do you have any comments other than on the superintendent's comments?
I'll save them, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Ayala? Mrs. Whitfield? Mrs. Andrews?
Yes, thank you. On last Friday, the Glades Tri-Cities leaders honored Superintendent Burke, Regional Superintendent Angela Moore, and Instructional Superintendent Dr. Monique McTeer, as well as I received an honor for leadership displayed and the work that's being done during this pandemic. Keeping the students educated, keeping the children safe was one of the highlights of the VIP luncheon that happened last Friday in the Glades. And so we all received a certificate, a lot of ovation for the work that's being done by all of our teachers, our schools, our staff, just everybody working together to make sure that students are continually being educated throughout this pandemic and through our school police and every effort possible to keep them safe and healthy. So we do thank the Glades region, the Tri-Cities, for this great honor. Thank you.
Dr. Robinson? Ms. Brill? I have none. That'll take us to, my computer went blank, excuse me 1 minute. Agenda item speakers. I'll call you three at a time, whichever time you get up to the microphone, just go ahead and speak. Please state your name when you come to the microphone, and please watch the clock. You'll have 3 minutes. Mariana Blanco, Julie Seaver, and Angelique Contreras. Go, ma'am. State your name, please.
Hello, Board. Jalique
I got-
Contreras. So I have a couple questions. I think we can talk on multiple topics. My first question would be to Marcia Andrews. Are you going to give back your award to the Florida School Board Association that you just recently received, since you no
Ms.
longer
Contreras,
want
stick to the
to
agenda item, please.
advertise
Stick to the
with
agenda item, Ms. Contreras.
Florida School Board Association?
Stick to the
Also,
agenda
I'm
item.
here to speak for Fiona, an 8-year-old brave young girl who has missed 36 days of education due to this school board and due to Seminole Ridge Elementary, Discovery Key Elementary. It is my understanding that she's missed 36 days of schools, and now you want to opt out mask on the 15th, which she has been trying to go to school without mask this entire time, and she's missed school. So what is the school board and Discovery Key Elementary going to do to make sure that she gets back that education that she missed out on because of you? Also, I'd like to say again, we do not agree with this new swift movement that you've made for the superintendent to make rules for other diseases and viruses. You might as well just go out there and get the millions and billions that are out there and just add it to the list. It's unfortunate that we continue to see this board to break the law. What you are doing by imposing this mask mandate on the children in Palm Beach County is breaking the law. We should not have to wait until November 15th for this to be retracted. And also, students shouldn't have to opt out of something they didn't opt out in the first place. These children should be able to go to school and smile and attend their school without a mask on, without being on some kind of watch list of children that can opt out of wearing a mask. We already submitted those letters to you, and we complied with that in the beginning of the school year. So I would be understanding that those same parents are going to send their kids to school without a mask. So we should not be having to do that once again. I don't know what more I can say to you. We show up time and time again to these school board meetings. Parents are frustrated. It is my understanding that you as a board are gaslighting parents. You're telling the local media that we are threatening you, and you are hurting the fact that parents are just concerned and wanting to show up and speak out for their children, which they have every constitutional right to do so. We will make sure, even with you going back on the mask mandate on November 15th, that every single school board member that is sitting on that seat and is up for re-election in 2022, that you will be replaced with individuals that support parental rights, with individuals that want excellence in our education, with individuals that are actually going to take care of the 504 plans, the IEP plans that have been left on the table for many years for children to get the education that they deserve. We are done dealing with this tyrannical school board, and we now are going to implement and put in place people that are going to respect our rights. Thank you.
Kavon, would you come up here, please? Go ahead, ma'am. Go ahead, ma'am.
Good afternoon, members of the school board. First, thank you for having us and for putting this item on the agenda. My name is Mari Blanco, and I'm the Assistant Director of the Guatemala My Center, which I've been involved with for over a decade. At the center, we serve families from 28 different countries, many whose children are students in your schools. We are the experts in cultural competence with our families, and our focus is advocating for the people and amplifying their voices. When we learned of Ms. Patrica's comments, we were distressed, but unfortunately not surprised. We have worked closely with the district for many years, and in the past, we've had many difficult conversations to ensure that our students are treated equitably and with dignity. The district has listened and recognizes that there's still much work to be done within the system, and Patrica's comments prove that. The remarks that were made about the Guatemalan children were a clear representation of the way that she views our community. Our invitation to the center was quickly revoked when we learned that she felt the same way about other minority groups, and this went far beyond a learning experience. We're now asking her to resign from her position as president of the FSBA, as she's not fit to be the example of the school boards across the state. We know that her beliefs don't represent the beliefs of the Palm Beach School District. In 1930, in San Diego, California, the Board of Trustees of the school district decided to construct a separate school from Lemon Grove Grammar School because they believed, quote, the Mexican children didn't understand English and this held back the white students. The Mexican children were unclean and endangered the health of every other student in the school, end quote. It is stunning to see resurrected the orchestrated contempt of an infamous era that we thought had ended with Brown v. Board of Education. We are pro-life, celebrating the people amongst us. As Chris Patrica hasn't resigned from her position at the FSBA, today we ask you, the Palm Beach School District, to resign from the FSBA. Her sentiments don't represent the beliefs of this board, and your students need to know that. Thank you.
Thank you. Julie Seaver, Michael Lefebvre. Michael Lefebvre. Julie Seaver, Jennifer Showalter. Go ahead, ma'am.
Good afternoon. My name is Julie Seaver. I'm the Executive Director of Compass Community Center, the only direct service provider for the LGBTQ people living in Palm Beach County. I'm here today to also call for the resignation of the President of the Florida School Board Association of the State of Florida, Chris Patrica, from Lee County due to her uneducated remarks about the Guatemalan children that were addressed previously by Assistant Executive Director of the Guatemalan Mayan Center, our neighbors to Compass in downtown Lake Worth. She has also made disparaging remarks around LGBTQ youth and more specifically transgender people. These statements and sentiments show not only a lack of education around the students she's supposed to be serving, but more importantly, a lack of desire in learning more about the different populations of students we have across the state of Florida. Not for the lack of opportunity, in 2016, Compass staff collaborated on a statewide equality training that provided two-day trainings to all school-based administrators, counselors, social workers, psychologists, nurses to address the growing number of issues faced by our LGBTQ students. Several board members and superintendents attended the training. As president of the Florida School Board Association for the state of Florida, Ms. Patrica was not in attendance. Ms. Patrica continues to deny issues related to LGBTQ students as completely disconnected from the students she was elected to serve. On October 2020, LGBTQ History Month resolution was pulled from the Lee County School Board meeting. People for and against the proclamation flooded the emails and took to social media with their opinions, leading to pulling the proclamation. I only bring this up to mention the importance of these proclamations and why leadership should be careful of censoring for their personal beliefs. Proposed resolutions and proclamations that help raise awareness for specific populations is designed to be a step toward helping students and employees feel safe and supported in local schools, leading to a more inclusive and affirming environment to learn in. Thank you, Palm Beach County School Board members, for recognizing LGBTQ History Month and teaching about history that the LGBTQ people plus face. As parents and adults who are committed to the health and welfare of our students, I think it's important we continue to diversely educate each other and educate the educators when it comes to any services provided to our youth in all communities. It is crucial that we continue to create safe and affirming spaces for all young people. When we center the experiences of the most marginalized, we're better able to improve the lives of all. Thank you for your time and consideration and asking for the resignation of Ms. Chris Patrica.
Thank you, ma'am. Michael LaFaver, Patricia Hastings, Melissa Borden.
Before I get started, I just want it to be noted on record.
State your name, please.
Jennifer Showalter. She was not wearing a mask for her entire speech, and you did not comment on that.
I'm sorry, who?
The speaker, can I have my time back, please?
Yeah, you have
The
your time.
speaker did not wear a mask. It was hanging off of her ear the entire speech, and not one of you commented on it. I just wanted that for the record.
Restart her time. You start. Go ahead.
I'm Jen Showalter, a concerned parent, not a domestic terrorist. I'm here like every month to speak on PIR1, POLA124, BD2, and other agenda items. They all boil down to the same issue. The board is not listening to the constituents, not even to Palm Beach County either, as the county rescinded their state of emergency as of the night before the last regular school board meeting. That means, I can't breathe. That means there's no COVID directives, orders, or SOE for our county as of October 19th. The school board keeps moving the goalposts, such as the 90-day policy limit. Members now on public record have stated students will wear masks until vaccinated. By the way, mandates are not laws. The school boards are not part of the legislative branch. The board will not follow data like VAERS, which lists staggering and horrifying stats of adverse reactions, especially to our young population. 90% drop in Florida cases, which makes us the lowest in the nation, as well as 99.998 recovery rate for 19 and under. The FDA said the PCR test had massive false positives and failed the full review. Also, let's be noted, all vaccines in use are EUA only. It's really a distraction from our abysmal proficiency scores. Last published report from U.S. News, our reading proficiency for elementary students was 55%, middle school at 49, high school at 52. Our math proficiency scores, elementary at 63, middle at 52, and high school only at 47%. And according to U.S. News on their website, our graduation rate is actually 74.9%, not 94%. And our college ready index is an embarrassing 32.8 out of 100. From watching TV last night, it's clear people are reclaiming their rightful place as the main decision maker for themselves and their children. As such, they want to be heard, respected, and told the truth. You talked about bullying prevention and disability awareness last month, yet the policies on the docket bully the staff, students, citizens of this county, as well as deny kids, even special needs kids, like my two sons, their medical exemptions. 21 state associations cutting ties with the National Association, all taking issue with the letter labeling concerned parents who speak at board meetings as domestic terrorists and asking for FBI investigations. The NSBA's apology to its members translate, our comms were sloppy, sorry we got caught, but they did rescind the letter. It is time for our school board to rescind their COVID policies as well. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Patricia Hastings. Knowledge is power. Knowledge is power. All of a sudden today, some of the kids are going to be able to opt out again. Fiona's already opted out, so have several others. But we know what you're doing because of the meeting on the 15th. So now I'm going to continue with what I originally planned to say. We, the people, against your mask mandate, are tired of proving that the school board of Palm Beach County is breaking the law. No matter how many ways you present your mandate, you are responsible for your actions. If you want to wear masks, wear them. If you don't want to wear a mask, don't wear one. make up your minds. But don't break the laws of this state and force it on innocent children. They are not your children. Remember parents' rights? Another law broken. Breaking the law means consequences. Do you not care about my granddaughter, Fiona Lachelle's, or her education? You can't seem to get your story straight. And now the questions are being asked of you by people that could put your jobs in jeopardy. You place the blame on anyone but yourselves. You know who you are. So sad for you, my daughter has it all documented. When my children were young, we did not know what bullying was, nor the consequences that bullying could have on them. I was the mom who always said, it'll be okay. The Lord says turn the other cheek. Things will get better. No, things do not get better. When you're bullied, you're being controlled. You cannot and will not stop my children and their children and anyone who believes in the Constitution of the United States of America from having freedom of speech and the right to choose. This is still America, home of the brave. Knowledge is power. It is time for you to open your eyes because you become less powerful every day against those of us who are seeing you and gaining knowledge about who you really are. You have said you have constitutional rights to implicate mask policies. You are puppets on a string, and Governor DeSantis is about to cut those puppet strings, and you will hit the ground hard. I pray for the day, and it will happen, that Fiona walks into school with no mask, does not get another disciplinary suspension, no more threats, no more being given a mask, and my strong-willed, bright granddaughter, who knows right from wrong and understands consequences, will have won this power control game you have been torturing her with for months. Go to the office, eat alone, don't talk to anyone, segregation, come in, walk to the office alone. That age, that's sick. Go home for another 3 days, no breakfast. We have lawyers. Yes, we will. No, not we have lawyers. You're telling my granddaughter, you guys have lawyers. Yes, we'll give you work to take home, but we're not going to grade it because you're not in class. You're going to fail even though you've been asked to go into accelerated classes. Your parents will have legal charges brought against them. Nice try. Do you know the legal
Thank you, ma'am.
ramifications
Time's up.
for your actions?
Melissa Borden, Joey Soto, Bailey Lachelle's. Time's up, ma'am. Time's up, ma'am. Melissa Borden, Joey Soto, Bailey Lachelle's.
Hello, my name is Dr. Melissa Borden. How about those Virginia elections and the court case in Alachua and the special session? Are you listening yet? It's over. Your need to control my child's health care is over. Take your victory of breaking the law and end it today. The numbers are minuscule compared to the mental and physical harm the masks are causing. Please check your egos at the door and do the right thing today and not in 2 weeks. My seventh grade daughter told me that she does not want to take off the mask because she wants to be. It's up. It's up. Please stop my time. It's up.
Freeze the time. Mark, freeze the time for a minute.
My seventh grade daughter told me she does not want to take off the mask because she wants to fit in, and you have normalized mask wearing in an age group that is impressionable. She also said it hides her pimples, which I told her are caused by the mask. She had COVID. It lasted a whole 6 hours. This is fear-based masking is causing irreparable harm to an adolescent's psyche. This is heartbreaking. The majority of counties were mask optional, and there was no difference in COVID cases. More counties are following suit. You are scared to end the quarantine of health. You were scared to end the quarantine of health kids. What happened when you did? Absolutely nothing. There was no surge in hospitalizations for kids. There was no outbreaks in the schools within the counties without mask mandates or quarantines. Your metrics are not suitable for a population that is not in danger. They're not based on school data. There have over and over again, community spread has nothing to do with schools. Your metrics are unattainable, but you already knew that, and that's why you put them in place. Use some common sense and your unnecessary and unlawful mask mandate today, not in 4 weeks, not in 2 weeks. According to the American Pediatrics, as of October 15th of this year, at this time, it appears that severe illness due to COVID-19 is uncommon in children. COVID-19 associated hospitalizations and death is uncommon in children. Are you paying attention yet? As a chiropractor, when a patient walks into my office, I do everything in my power to get them better. I also tell them that no one cares about their health more than they do. Don't be ignored. Listen to your gut and keep searching for someone to listen and help. Be your own advocate. As a parent, no one cares about our children as much as we do. I am my child's advocate, not you. A reminder, we are parents standing up here to protect our children out of love. If you're still unwilling to change this unnecessary policy, then it must stem from a deep-rooted hatred of being proven wrong. This never had anything to do with health. Taking away parents' rights is illegal. We will never stop until we win this battle. The state of emergency is over. It's time to move on and make mask optional to our students and teachers today. Make it not 2 weeks. One last thing. Do you guys know that HIV and sexually transmitted diseases are communicable? Please add that. Take that out of your whole policy.
Hi, I am Fiona Lachelles. I was on my 36th day of suspension. Last night, my mom got a phone call about if I could go on the news with the governor. And my mom asked me, and I said yes. So if you didn't see the Fox and Friends morning news, you should go see me and the governor. He told you to stop what you're doing to me is illegal. And even though you guys are suspending me, I'm still going to stand up for what I believe in. And nothing's going to change my mind. That is not fair. I still have the right not to wear a mask, and I'm not going to wear one. I'm doing this for other kids and not just myself. And I hope you all go to jail for doing this to me. And Mr. Berg, I want to say you suck, but...
Turn off the microphone. Turn it off. Turn it off. Next speaker, come to the microphone. Go ahead.
Bailey
State your name,
Lachelles.
please.
Excuse me?
State your name, please.
Bailey Lachelles. I want to give you guys a little recap of the events that have happened since Monday, in case you're not aware. Monday, November 1st, there's an article written by the Free Press out of Tampa. Title reads, Florida second grade students suspended 36 days over not wearing masks. The article was subsequently shared by Newsbreak as well as Christina Pushaw, DeSantis' secretary. I will keep the recap short, but the governor's office is quoted as saying the governor has always been clear that masks should be a parent's choice in schools, and Mrs. Pushaw added that this type of singling out of one student is in direct violation of state law and the Parents' Bill of Rights. Mr. Burke, I know sometimes you get sidetracked, so if you can listen to that real well. They said you're singling out my daughter and in direct violation of state law and the Parents' Bill of Rights. House Rep Mike Caruso commented that sadly today we face a school board in Palm Beach County that defies the governor's orders by mandating masking of all children in school. They've decided that they know best for our children instead of leaving that responsibility in the hands of the parents. I call on the school board to reverse this decision, in part, Caruso said. School board couldn't be reached for comment. Tuesday, Fox News and the Associated Press picked up the article about Fiona. When reached for comment this time, Governor DeSantis' press secretary stated, anyone denying a child the right to go to school for noncompliance with an illegal mask mandate does not care about education and certainly does not care about kids. Once again, when Fox reached out to this school board, guys couldn't be reached for comment. This morning, the Free Press did as promised and published an article again on Fiona, this one titled, As the Case of a Florida Second Grader Shows Mandate-Happy Democrats Are Content to Make Rules They Don't Live By. The hypocrisy on this one is really great. You guys should all go check it out. It can also be found on Newsbreak, and I can only wonder how long till Fox gets it. Basically, the stories are going to keep coming till your mandate ends. This brings me to this morning, when our governor was nationwide on Fox and Friends with Fiona this morning, speaking out for Fiona against this board. Board members, I don't know if it was just me, but I kind of got the impression standing in the room with the governor that he's really tired of giving y'all these warnings, and he seems really tired of making the same statements to all of you over and over. At least that was my take on it. What I'm trying to get at here is you've woken parents like me up, the ones who never saw ourselves sitting in this boardroom, the ones who have 100 other things to do and don't want to be here. When the county does a 7-0 vote yesterday and Dr. Alonso removes the mandate for the county and you're keeping our kids in masks, my question to all of you is, seriously, you're going to try and push this another 2 weeks to the special session when our governor shuts you down once and for all anyway? I mean, he's spoken pretty clear and lets you know exactly how he feels about what you're doing. And if you hadn't seen it, go rewatch Fox and Friends with Fiona from this morning. Mr. Burke, we know what's coming then. It's not lawyers, it's not guns, and it's not money. Look at my daughter. I know none of you are.
Time's up, ma'am.
Oh,
Gregory Tammany, Susan Sullivan, Kim Heddich. Hold off, ma'am. We have a speaker in the other room.
All right, hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Gregory Tammany, District 3. To continue, we have asked you to resign repeatedly. We showed you our feelings precisely. You ignored every plea we had for you to stop torturing and punishing our kids. You ignored every correction we offered and showed you. So I want to rehash a bit. You don't want any political speech in this room unless it's yours. You do not want us criticizing you and even mislabeled this as threats. We know you didn't get any threats. Most of us have been right here, front and center, defending our children as we always will. I'm going to reiterate this because you don't seem to get it. You do not have authority. Your job as a school board is to observe and report medical issues, not treat them. We have trained school nurses and paramedics to start observations until handoff to treatment, until and if needed. Here is a new concept for you to consider. If you do not advocate for children per our beliefs, you will reap the due rewards. It is a fact that you have put your names, your careers, in fact, your whole lives, all in and gambling your lives for your politics. I don't know if you've been watching the news lately. This is a nationwide issue. That's right. Local school boards are all over the news calling us domestic terrorists. Well, I want to tell you, the Saul Alinsky tactics are failing. This is the last call for you guys to bail, because if this goes to election time, you will be held fully accountable to all of your decisions you've made with our children. Each one of you executed and violated all of our rights. I personally want you to know each one of you have proven you are unfit for this position. These mistakes in your judgment you have made makes each one of you unworthy of the most important, most influential position in every single elected position in the totality of the United States government. You are on the front lines of our child's development, and you've proven unworthy and failed in advocating for our children. Shame on you. I pray for you and I pity you. And Greta. Way stronger than Greta. By the way, you're all breaking the law. Every officer in here should understand they took an oath. They took an oath to enforce the law. There are no laws. There are no mandates. There's none of this, and this is not a legislative body. I got 30 seconds. Let me organize my notes here. Oh, there you go. Unmask us. Here you go. Fiona Strong right here. Unmask our children. Stop all this nonsense before every one of your lives is wrecked. You are making bad decisions, and they're going to affect your whole lives. Thank you.
Go ahead, ma'am. State your name, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Kim Heddich, and I'm a parent from District 6. Marcia, it's nice to address you face to face. We spoke many times on the phone. You told me throughout the summer that you believe in parental choice, and may I quote you saying, "We need to get the mask off the kids." I'm here today to publicly speak out against you and tell our community all of your lies. All we have right now is our word. I took your word at face value. I saw your lies come out over time, and now your chance is over. I have a petition for your removal. District 6, come meet me to sign. Barberi, I saw your email to the pediatricians. It's because of people like you that my asthmatic son is no longer being looked at as a person or a patient because you have convinced the pediatric practices to uphold blanket denials for any mask exemptions. Shame on you. Shame on you. I have your petition for removal. District 5, come meet me to sign. Aliyah stepped out again. Hope she hears it. I've watched you for months now, Aliyah, trying to label parents who come to the meeting as domestic terrorists. I have even heard you say that it is a privilege to address you in this room. Well, I'm here to tell you it really is a privilege to stand here, clearly not face-to-face, but to tell you I have your recall petition here. District 2, please come meet me to sign. Burke, you're the board's puppet, and oh, how you perform. The most outstanding performance, in my opinion, is when I watched you on August 18th chuckle, as you were striking out lines of the masking policy, removing parental right to opt out while saying that we're making up our own rules now. Enough is enough. It is time for each one of you to go. Children's brains need oxygen to grow. Our children are not safe in this environment as long as you all sit on these seats. Parents, sign the petitions. I have been denied the Hope Scholarship by Frontier Elementary's principal, Susan Groth, and I have removed my child to homeschool over this. But I stand here today to encourage all parents to stand up and push back, no matter how much these people bully you. Once this board is removed, this will be a district that I would be proud to join again. That is all.
State your name, please.
Hi, my name is Sandy Sullivan. I find it incredibly confusing that I need to ask the board members to pay attention to all the parents and kids that are speaking today. Can you please put your electronics or paperwork or anything down to be able to listen and give full attention to each person that is here speaking? Thank you. I was at work today, so I don't have very much prepared. I was at work, and I don't make $300,000 plus bonuses a year. Oh, yes, sir. Absolutely, police officer that comes here to babysit adults. It's wonderful. Thank you. Anyhow, I am a simple mom, and I love my children, and I love other children, and I want the best for them. They should be able to shine in their one and only childhood as brightly and as much as they possibly can. Children need to be able to shine and be carefree during their one and only childhood. It's incredibly confusing to me that today is picture day, at least in my school. I'm not sure if it's around the county of Palm Beach. I know that the pictures are taken indoors, and for the picture, I don't think they're wearing masks. They get to pull them down or take them off for a pretty little picture. Same thing with Character Day during Halloween. I saw many students hugging without masks, taking pictures indoors. It is incredibly confusing and disappointing. Thank you for making masks optional on November 15th, although I do think that that should be made a policy immediately, since most parents have opted out of masking their children. How can you blindly continue to cause fear, control, and bullying our children and families? I don't know how you can morally, in your heart, go to sleep every day knowing that you're doing this to children. You know that our eyes have been on you for months, if not since last year. We have been watching you closely. Now you know that the eyes of the U.S. are also on you, on Palm Beach. Please choose your actions wisely. When this optional mask goes into effect on November 15th, that should be it. Optional mask continuously. It should not go back to mask mandates. That is unlawful and an overreach of any of your positions. We are the parents, and we need to choose what's best for our child. Please do what's right. Please do what's right. Thank you.
Cindy DeFalco, Bethany Phillips, Alana Moneth.
Here. On?
Yeah, you're on. Go ahead.
My name is Cindy. It is sad right now that I just witnessed a man being taken to jail, all because of just wanting to sit here and speak. I don't know who ordered that, but that was really disheartening, and it really was scary to watch, and for people in this room to see that 4 police officers, it looked like, that went on this man outside and arrested him. I want to remind you, you are all under oaths of office. You swore an oath, a superior oath, to uphold the Constitution and to uphold our state constitutions. You are in violation of every one of those oaths. It says here that Congress makes the rules. Congress makes laws, not local government, not school boards. You have been told since May 3rd there's no more emergency order in regards to wearing masks. Yet you yourselves decided to disobey the governor. And yet you want people and children to obey you. You are the examples of insubordination and submissiveness. This is really sad, because this is hypocrisy in the worst degree. Now, I see a lot of you up there on the dais. You're pretty much my age group. We've had colds and flus our whole life, and guess what? We're still here, aren't we? What about herd immune system? When we used to send our children in to get chickenpox with each other so that they would come through this. You're talking about things as if children are diseases, and if you cough, it's a disease, and it creates this situation that, oh my God, they're contaminated. Now, I know that you are parents and grandparents. Do you really, really do this to your children? I mean, do you really believe this when you've seen with life statistics, not numbers made up by someone who says they're a doctor or sits there and just says, oh, well, let's just pull this number out of our head, but actual statistics? And the only people I know that have been dying are the ones who went to the hospital and got put on a ventilator. And now, even greater than ever, is I know of 5 people just from getting that vaccination who have died within the day thereof or the week thereof. So you're talking things that you really know nothing about. You really need to do your due diligence. And I would encourage you, because you're still, as I last checked, a man and a woman. And a man and a woman, we have rights as a man and a woman. Because see, God gave us those rights. And you are thinking you're God and that you can take our rights away. Well, you can't. And as many have said before, jail time is around the corner. You can no longer use your draconian rules and laws on we the people, because we don't live, or we're not even employees of the government. So none of those rules and laws go to us at all. It goes to those who are an employee. So I want to encourage you, moms and dads, I want to encourage you to keep standing, keep not complying, because listen, masks, your children weren't born with a mask on their face. Why would you put a mask on their face? You do not have to listen to these lies, these draconian laws that do not affect us, but they're trying to bully us into it. And you are bullies.
Hope Mucklow, Bethany Phillips, Alana Moneth. Go ahead, ma'am. State your name, please.
Hi, my name is Hope Mucklow, and I am absolutely just taking this meeting and going, is this like entertaining daytime TV? Are you people educators or not? Because I first of all, okay, so let me just get this straight. So the new superintendent is the one who drafted this proposal that you all were discussing earlier in the meeting. He's consulting someone who's just taking the MCATs, which is the test that you take to get into medical school, to draft this, which is one of the reasons why Dr. Robinson isn't comfortable, because see, she understands that they, meaning the doctors, can't differentiate between bacteria and viruses when patients come in with respiratory tract infections. You all think the PCR test and the test they have for COVID is foolproof. It is not. I used to work in the pharmaceutical industry. I made a lot of money there, unfortunately, telling lies. Things like inciting fear in doctors and pointing out that they needed to use broad spectrum antibiotics because they don't know what's causing that deep-seated cough, sinus infection, pneumonia. So empirical therapy was the catchword that we would use to get them to prescribe antibiotics inappropriately when it most likely would have been a virus that they needed to just treat differently. So you really need to slow down here, folks. And I do appreciate that at least the lawyer on board is paying a little bit of attention with the doctor. But folks, let's be real here. Life is really complicated, and you all have been playing a big game for a long time, meaning the lawyer field as a whole and the medical community that has put out people like Dr. Melissa Borton, who spoke very eloquently from a chiropractor standpoint. The Medical Association of America, or GM, or American Medical Association, put aside and were bullies to all natural doctors, naturopaths, chiropractors, and just took control. This is just not appropriate. So I would like to close just with a reminder of what my t-shirt says here. And for those that do not know, I've learned an awful lot homeschooling my daughter in the past 8 years, and I highly recommend it because it has helped me to clean up my poor public education, because it is constitutional that only the legislative branch is who writes laws, not the school board. So let's just be reminded of that. You are not law writers. Now, I would also encourage all of you and give you a homework assignment. Look into the history of why public school was started back in Massachusetts and what school boards were all about. You all have strayed very, very far away. Thank you very much.
Mr. Superintendent, I've called all the names on the list, so we can go. Go ahead, ma'am. State your name, please.
Hi, Alana Monath. This communicable disease policy is being pushed so this board can receive hundreds of millions of federal funds. If this was really about health and wellness, diabetic meds, cancer, and other life-saving therapeutics would be free, profit over children. Mandatory, required, mandated, requested, ordered, ordinance, decree, compulsory, policy are not laws. Anything that is repugnant, in conflict with the U.S. and state constitutions are null and void. Statutes, codes, ordinances, and policies are guidelines put in place for our public servants who have taken an oath to abide by the Constitution. Where in the Constitution does it say Americans must comply with your commands? Where in the Constitution does it say the job of any elected official is to keep Americans safe and healthy, and the power to control parents' decisions? Where in the Constitution does it say you were given delegated authority over our properties, education, and health? It doesn't. Therefore, you are all in violation of your oaths and the Constitution. Any elected officials who violate their oaths and the Constitutions operate in their private capacity, so people can sue you privately. The maxim of law states that the proof relies on he or she who affirms, not upon he or she who denies. Right now, the science, the facts, and the evidence deny that COVID is a threat. Dr. Alonso, the county commissioners, and this board haven't produced the science nor the evidence. The Declaration and the Constitution are clear that private property shall not be taken without just compensation. The science is the just compensation. Furthermore, it has been stated that any enterprise undertaken by the public official who tends to weaken public confidence and undermine the sense of security for individual rights is against public policy, and the courts have already determined with McNally versus United States, 1987, that a public official is a fiduciary toward the public, and if he or she deliberately conceals material information from them, he or she is guilty of fraud. 18 U.S.C. 1031. Therefore, the law commands that you are burdened with the duty of care with obligation to produce the facts, science, and evidence relied upon as consideration for any emergency measure for any taking of the private property of the people, the failure of which tends to weaken public confidence and undermine the sense of security for individual rights, which is against public policy and includes the deliberate concealment of material information in a setting of fiduciary obligation of which apply to all employees and elected officers No proof of the facts, science, and evidence equals no proof of claim. No proof of claim equals you're not right. No right equals no wrong. You are all wrong. Governing yourself accordingly.
Board members, board member wish to pull anything from the consent agenda? Seeing none, we need a motion to approve the consent agenda. Motion by Mrs. Andrews, second by Dr. Robinson. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. First item under new business is BRD2. BRD2. I recommend the board discuss and take any action needed to sever, resign, and terminate their membership with the Florida School Board Association effective immediately, and that the superintendent and board chair take all appropriate actions. Motion by Mrs. Andrews, seconded by Mrs. Whitfield. Discussion? Ma'am, the lady in the other room, I'll get back to you. I called your name. I moved on when you didn't come to the microphone. Hold for us, and I'll get back to you. Go ahead, Mrs. Whitfield.
Thank you. I just was curious if we need to individually say whether or not we're going to resign, or if...
Yes, you're right. This is not the way I asked the administration to write this recommendation. It was to discuss and take whatever action the board felt necessary with respect to this issue. So if you want to discuss individual withdrawals or full withdrawal, whatever you all want to discuss, it's there for discussion and then a decision that you all want to make.
Okay. Well, I just want to say a huge thank you to the Guatemala Maya Center and to the Compass Community Center for coming and expressing their views tonight. I think it's very valuable to hear from the people that are, affected by the comments that were made. And so I just want to say thank you for everyone putting this on the agenda. And I would like to resign my membership, at least. I'll start with that. Thank you.
Mrs. Andrews.
Thank you. And I, too, would like to thank the speakers tonight. It was devastating to see children demeaned and called racial names, and just really from the person that's the president of a state organization, which I have belonged to since I've been on this school board, but I had to make my decision to step aside. Yes, I've received awards, and I've worked hard along with everybody here on this board for the Florida Schools Board Association. But I've shared with the executive director there should be something in place in the bylaws when you have a president of any organization, when they demean their position or cause harm to the organization, that there should be some way that that person would be actually removed from that position for the greater good of the organization. I must take the stand as my own individual rights and beliefs that we respect all people, all children, all adults. And I take the stand of removing myself until the Florida School Boards Association take the necessary steps to correct the situation at the Florida School Boards Association. Thank you.
Ms. Ayala.
Thank you. As I said last meeting when we had the opportunity to discuss this, I cannot continue my involvement with this organization at this time. Their comments were not only hurtful to a community I proudly represent, but to myself, and they clearly do not have the judgment and leadership that I expect out of an organization of this caliber. So I would like my individual membership revoked.
Vice Chairwoman Brill.
Thank you. So I'm going to make a motion, but before I do so, for the public who had spoken about asking for Patricia to resign, the FSBA did ask her to, and she declined. So I want that to be for all of them to know that. But I want to make a motion that we, as a collective school board, resign from the Florida School Board Association.
I have a motion by Ms. Brill. Is there a second? Mrs. Andrews? Discussion? All in favor? Dr. Robinson?
So, I think I expressed this before. I feel a little bit conflicted. I guess I hate walking away from a fight. Maybe that's what it is. But, and again, as I said, the Florida School Board Association was never an organization that I really connected with. And maybe I should just chalk this up to we've come a long way, because I remember being in this room when a school board, actually it was a board chair, referred to LGBTQ people as another species. And I was the only one who was upset.
Not this board chair.
No, nobody currently sitting here was there other than me. I'm the old timer, right? And I was just truly upset, and I was the only one that was upset. And so maybe I should take this as a win that it appears that the board is collectively disturbed by those statements. It does trouble me, though, that there will be this statewide organization that purports to represent school boards who will be, I don't know, I'm looking from the outside because, I told you I don't really actively participate with them because I was so disappointed, but they would be left unchecked and potentially move away from the direction one would hope, right? And so my question is, as I understand, we paid our dues. Can we get a refund on our dues? Does anyone know?
Yeah, we can pursue that. I want to confirm, we've had some conversation that may be possible.
Okay. So I'm going to, under the banner of coming a long way, since finally I'm not the only person who's outraged by various IST comments, I will support the motion. But I would hope that if we can find a way to change that organization that purports to represent school boards throughout the state, that we would take advantage of such opportunity. I don't know what that looks like, but I just hate to see them. I hate to see them left unchecked. When I got on this board, because of what I consider to be attitudes and practices that were very unfavorable to whichever group of other, long list of others that were not respected in these chambers. And I just had trouble abandoning the effort to improve institutions. So I'm conflicted, but under the banner of we're making progress, I will support the the amendment.
Mrs. McQuinn, did you have your hand up, or was Ms. Viala? I saw a hand down there, and I don't know which one of you it was. Okay, so the next one to speak would be Mrs. Andrews, then Vice Chair Burrell, and then Mrs. Whitfield.
Dr. Robinson, to you and to my fellow board members, you all selected me to be on the board of directors representing the Florida School Boards Association. I took that job seriously and attended all of the meetings. Because of the work that we do here in Palm Beach County, I was asked to lead equity and to work to make the organization better. I just had the unfortunate situation to have a president who is actually giving me direction as a committee chair, as well as being on the board of directors. We have to fall under the president, and when the president is acting out of turn, acting inappropriate, creating havoc for the state organization, I do need to make a statement on that. I do believe, as I said before, we as a board, I was so proud of us last time, because we've been trained here. We know better. We believe in children. We love one another, and we don't make those kinds of statements. And we're board members elected for all children, and we do the right thing for everybody. So I just can't sit into that organization if I don't see the movement of trying to learn, to be better, to get the training necessary. And so when the president decided that she wasn't going to step aside, and a couple of her other friends said that they would support her getting some help, and you had several others that said she needed to go, but you only had 5 people, and the president was one of the 5. So when you have 2 saying that we know she needs help, and maybe 2 more that is supportive of her trying to stay there and learn to be better, but when you're up in age and you make the level of being the president of a state organization, it's just truly unacceptable. So I have to make the statement, and I'm happy to hear my fellow board members know that something has to be done by the Florida School Board Association. I've shared that with the executive director. I've shared that with the president, and I mean that. So they're going to have to make some real major changes there before I ever consider going back there.
Thank you. Mrs. Whitfield, then Vice Chair Brew.
Thank you. I appreciate what you're saying, Dr. Robinson. I just want you to know that I do like the idea of voicing this. Two things that I think are important in this. First of all, I think taking our funding away from the Florida School Boards Association that we give, that is quite large, because we are a large district, is a very good message to send to them. I think we're telling them that we no longer support the agenda that they have. And I personally have very much enjoyed attending the Florida School Board's meetings. I've gone every 6 months since I've been on this board. I like the networking. I like the trainings that we get. I also understand, and Mr. Bogus can talk to this a little bit, that we do get our board docs through them. So that's how we, for everyone in the community, that's how we do our agendas. So that is a concern with getting our funding back from them. But I feel like that's a really good statement that we as a school board have an opportunity to make, and to say that this does not represent us. Now, the other thing that I'm hoping comes out of this is that school boards throughout the state will see our statement and say, does this president, does this executive team at the Florida School Boards Association represent them? And if they do, they can stay. And if they want to see change, like we want to see change, then maybe they'll make this statement along with the school board of Palm Beach County. So I'm proud of the school board for making this statement. Those two community groups that spoke are very near and dear to my heart. They're both from my neighborhood, and they're groups that I really, really care about and support. So to me, today, I want to take away any funding that goes to an organization that says bad things about children that I care about. That's the big deciding factor for me today. So I want to take our money back. I want to step away from this organization, and I want to say to them, make the change that you need to make so that you support every child in the state of Florida. Thank you.
All right, I have two more, and then let's wrap this up so we can move on to the other agenda items. Ms. Brill and then Dr. Robinson.
Thank you. So first of all, I spoke to Andrea Messina after our last meeting, and she indicated to me that they would refund the monies that we paid. Our withdrawing from the FSBA today does not preclude us joining them again. I would hope that Dr. Robinson would join us to make the changes there. I will say, though, that over the last couple of years, I really have not participated. I found I got the most out of it when they were virtual. When I did go there, it was good to have the networking opportunities, but I would sit through trainings, and quite frankly, I'd come out, and I know Mrs. Andrews and I would shrug and look at each other and say, after a session, and say, we've already been doing that for years. So we are light years ahead of many of the districts that are there. I do share Mrs. Whitfield's concern that maybe other districts found it acceptable. And so I think we do need to send that message and then see if it is an organization that we do wish to rejoin. But yes, they are willing. The CFO has given the approval, as I was told 2 weeks ago, to reimburse us for the funds that were paid.
Dr. Robinson.
Thank you. I would just offer a friendly amendment to the amendment, and that is that we resign, I'm going to call it en masse, from FSBA to revisit when Chris Patrica is no longer president.
Accept that?
I'm fine with that.
So we have a modification. We have a second. Mrs. Whitfield. Any discussion on the modification? Discussion? Mrs. McQuinn?
Well, just in agreement with the amendment, because we are withdrawing en masse as a board because of FSBA's refusal to remove the president. That is our objection. And I also, because I do want to say that I found the sessions when I was a new board member to be very helpful. But after that, again, our groups often present.
Mrs. McQuinn, pull up your mask, please.
Oh, Lord have mercy, excuse me. And thank you for reminding me. Now, okay, moving forward. So, I do appreciate the reminder. So thank you for that. Now, going back to Dr. Robinson's, or somebody's, about working within the organization, we have a very strong contingency from the Glades that goes to every session, and they have made a difference. And in helpful legislation for our Glades area. So I like the fact that we have agreed that we will revisit it. Thank you.
I saw one, Mrs. Andrews, you want to discuss that? Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll go along with that, Dr. Robinson, but I think we have to put something in the bylaws, because I don't ever want us to be here again where something happens and you have a president that has gone rogue, created havoc for the organization. There needs to be something in the laws that will make sure that it's looked at and that person can be removed, not because they don't want to be removed or they may have friends that want to keep her there, but if there's some criteria there that shows that you've actually damaged the organization by your behavior based on the objectives of the organization to take care of all students and making sure that they're successful, there has to be something in the bylaws to knock that out, so that if this ever happens again, I would never want to be sitting there saying, I remember this from before, and here we are again.
All right, is there any more discussion on that modification? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. We're back to the main motion to withdraw the school board, the school district, the school board, whichever the proper term is. General Counsel?
It should be a motion to both individually and collectively
Okay.
withdraw.
Okay. We need a motion to modify the motion again.
Motion to individually and collectively withdraw membership from the Florida School Board Association.
We have a second on that one. Ms. Ayala, any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Now we have a main motion, which I believe is just like the modification that was just made. So let's just vote on it just to keep the General Counsel happy. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Mr. Superintendent, no, I'm sorry. We have two speakers that I called their names and I didn't realize they were here. And I'm sorry to keep you, Ms. Phillips. Go ahead. Do you have your time now? And after her, I understand that we have another speaker that's here. His name is Michael Lefevre. He can come up next. Go ahead, Ms. Phillips.
So it's kind of ironic that the start of what I wanted to say is that I'm being ignored, because I was just ignored for a long period of time while my 3 children are waiting. So I do appreciate you taking the time to allow me to speak. Not only am I being ignored every time I come here, my family's being ignored, my children are being ignored, along with a lot of other families. Do you want to talk about what's available to me and my family? Because still nobody sent me an email, a phone call, nothing to this day. My kids were forced to be unenrolled September 24th. So I've been scrambling, trying to find what to do with them. I would love to homeschool them, but I'm a single mother, sole parent, and I have to work and pay bills. So what are my options really? Thankfully, I just found placement for 2 of my children in a school where masks are optional. So I'm very thankful for that. But I've not yet found schooling for my 7th grader. You mentioned authority, that you have the authority. I just want to let you know that parents actually have the authority. Right. You're confused somewhere. There's some sort of veil, I guess, covering your eyes. I don't really know what it is. It's very strange. It's like when you say that the sky is red. It's like, it's blue. Like, we all know it's blue. It's blue. It's blue, guys. It's not freaking red. Or maybe it is red. Education is your main priority. I just want to remind you, because again, there's like this confusion, okay? Education. Education. School, board, school equals education, school board, education. Hope you got it now. It's a shame. Shame on you, really. You're a corrupt example to my children and to all of the children that are supposed to be that what the whole board's created for. I've had to spend a lot of money on applications for my children. Again, single sole parent. You know, I'm not a doctor, unfortunately. So my income is what it is. So not only have I paid application fees, I'm also paying for uniforms. This was today, my bill of $273.49. So I have to do that. I have to take time off of work, loss of pay. Again, what are you really doing? Help us, not hurt us. Help us, not hurt us. If you can't figure out an option, you need to be gone so all children can receive an education, not just some of the ones. Stop living in fear, please, for humanity. It's time to refocus on education. Do your job in Jesus' name.
Michael LaFaber.
I know you guys say that you're educators, but I brought some Webster's dictionary with me for clarification. Equity, fairness and justice in the way people are treated. Justice according to natural law or right. Freedom from bias or favoritism. You literally sit here and segregate us into little pods of color, gender, transgender, religion, all in the name of equity. You teach some kids that they are overprivileged and morally evil, and other kids that they are oppressed and inferior, all in the name of equity. You advocate for genetic males with sex changes to compete in girls' sports, dominating other girls right out of their athletic records, scholarships, and futures, all in the name of equity. That's where it gets good. 2 young girls were raped in two Virginia school bathrooms by the same boy wearing a skirt, which was covered up, and the cover-up was covered up as well. And the father was arrested for speaking about it. All in the name of equity. All in the name of equity. My daughter is no longer attending any school in your district because she will not bow to your mask mandates. She denied a 7-year-old an education. Is that what you consider equity? Because I'm not confident in the way that you run this district that you really know what equity means. What you are doing is not equity, it is segregation. Segregation, the policy or the practice or policy of keeping people of different races, religions, etc., separate from each other. The act or process of segregating, the state of being segregated. The separation or isolation of a race, class, or ethnic group by enforced or voluntary residence in a restricted area by barriers in social intercourse, by a separate educational facilities, or by other discriminatory means. The separation for special treatment or observation of individuals or items from larger groups. That sounds a lot more like what you're really doing here, segregating. And I'm seriously worried when I see how you've mixed the two. I'm seriously concerned by this board and all its little activists bouncing around all happy as can be that they're fighting for equity, using the very words of segregation. This is sick. This is sick. I'm glad I don't have to be responsible for the type of education that you have supplied for the people that come up here and speak these words. Because you know what? They're wrong, and you know it. And if you don't, you better grab a dictionary. And by the way, we the people have had enough.
Superintendent L1.
Yes, L1, I recommend the board approve the 2022 legislative platform and issues of continuing concern for Palm Beach County Schools.
Motion by Mrs. Andrews, seconded by Ms. Ayala. Discussion?
Thank you. I wanted to talk about this one. I have had some conversations with the Early Learning Coalition, and we wanted to see if this board would be amenable to adding one more item to the voluntary pre-kindergarten section. The item that we would like to add is to put a piece in there that would say to amend. Did you guys get copies? Oh, good. To amend 1002.82 FS to include language that modifies the school readiness program payment policy. This will ensure providers serving high-need communities are paid a fair rate equal to providers in more affluent communities. And if I can just take a quick second to explain why we're doing this. Apparently, when the Early Learning Coalitions throughout the state wanted to up their school readiness dollars and how much they were actually giving to these early learning locations, Miami-Dade found that some of their providers would not raise their rates. And the reason they wouldn't raise their rates was because the private providers within those communities, so just, the mom and dad who's not part of the school readiness, have to pay the same rate as they were asking for from the school readiness dollars. So what that meant was, if they were to raise the rates that Early Learning Coalition was providing back, mom and dad that wasn't a part of it would also have to pay a higher rate, and they knew their communities could not do that. So what we're asking is that we allow our legislative group to be able to go out and lobby to add this little piece into it, and I can read it again if you want to add this little piece into our legislative platform so that the Early Learning Coalition can pay those higher rates at those areas and not force those communities to have to pay even more to be able to get those rates. So it'll only be for communities where their rate was paying is underneath. This affects children birth through 13 years old, but I did actually contact our aftercare director, Ms. Kawana Howell, and she said that we pay the same rate across the board. So even though readiness dollars are affected throughout that whole area, really it would be birth through 5 years old. You guys have any questions?
Yeah, Ms. Brill, go ahead.
Thank you. I want to support you, but I have no idea what you said. Could you somehow succinctly just, I got part of it. Just give like a statement of what you would like to add or make a motion.
The piece that we want to add is that we would amend, we were asking our lobbyists to help us amend 1002.82 to include language that modifies the school readiness program payment policy. This is how we get funding to our organizations that are providing VPK programs, pre-K programs. This will ensure providers serving a high-need community are paid a fair rate equal to providers in more affluent communities. So what's really happening right now is some people in some of our affluent communities are able to pay a higher rate, and that means that we can pay the readiness dollars can be equal to that higher rate. In a poorer community, they will have to pay a lower rate so they don't affect the other families who are not part of the readiness dollars. Does that make sense?
Yes, but now just state just the motion part and not the discussion.
Okay. All right. Well, as long as we're all clear then. So the motion is to add to the piece where it says voluntary pre-kindergarten on our state legislative priorities, amend 1002.82 FS to include language that modifies the school readiness program payment policy. This will ensure providers serving high needs communities are paid a fair rate equal to providers in more affluent communities. Good? That's the motion.
Okay. That's seconded by Dr. Robinson. Discussion.
Thank you. I'm sorry that was very confusing.
It's okay. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Dr. Robinson?
Thank you. And I have an amendment to propose as well. I've passed out the documentation that provides more detail to the programs that I want to talk about. So as you will recall in our previous conversations about the legislative platform, we kind of had a holding space for the historic Roosevelt High School project. And at our last board discussion on the legislative platform, I outlined the numerous components that the community hopes to see on that campus, and that the fact that the school district's funding was going to support the construction of an academic building and the restoration of the gym as a multi-purpose cultural arts site. The request that I have before you is really just simply a request that we allow and ask our lobbyists to support 2 appropriations bills that are coming from the community, that each will provide content that will go into the Black History Museum on that campus once it is developed. So I'll tell you briefly what they are. It's a local history project where, in this scenario, the Coalition for Black Student Achievement and the Palm Beach County African Diaspora Historical and Cultural Society will work together and bring in teams of people who will go to 4th grade classrooms and, in support of the 4th grade standards around Florida history, teach students how to research not only their own history, but their community's history. And that will be, and may be presented in documents, multimedia presentation, or community demonstration project, all of which could be demonstrated actually for us here, or be content for the future museum. The second one is the oral history project, where high school students would be hired over the summer to collect the oral history of elders in the community to tell the story, so to speak. And those are would be expected to be shown wherever, but including the museum. So what these things accomplish is, one, it provides, if funded, provides outstanding creative learning experiences for students. It creates content for the proposed Black History Museum at Historic Roosevelt. It takes advantage of community resources to teach students how to research, think, and present their findings without adding to teachers' plates. So this is a request that the school board allow both the local history project and the oral history project to be added to our legislative platform so our lobbyists will be able to support these requests.
Mrs. McQuinn, then Mrs. Andrews.
Just a comment regarding the oral history project. About 15 years ago in the Glades, there was a very comprehensive oral history project. I don't remember that it included the high school students. I simply would like for us to not forget that. And this was specific to Glades elders, but somehow make sure that that's included with this, because I hate to see all of that work, and I was able to see some of the videos that were produced. I don't want to lose that. So when we talk about communities, I want to please make sure that that's part of this. I don't see that it is, and I'd like to make sure that it is.
You want to follow Dr. Robbins before we go to Mrs. Andrews?
Yeah,
clarify
actually, yes,
clarify
no.
for Ms. McQuinn.
Yes?
Yes.
The expectation is that this will be a county-wide effort. Yeah.
Okay, Mrs. Andrews?
I had a chance to talk to Mr. LaFace from Capital City this morning. It's about 7:30, as well as working with Ms. Solnet, and I just want to be clear to everybody. I know it's a different place in Tallahassee this year. I don't know if we're going to get anything. I love that we have the ask, the appropriation request, and I thank Ms. Solnet for working with West Tech for the $397,000 to secure the equipment to expand, the CDL and the welding and the home health aid. But I'm not sure what's going to happen when it actually gets out there because of the climate that we're in at this point in time. And so I just want to make sure that everybody knows that I'm still trying to seek others to maybe carry this forth. Last year, I wasn't sure if I was going to even have the school board to do it because we were late getting everything in. But now that we've made it in here, it may mean nothing because we may not have the approvals at those lower levels to move it forward. And I know our legislative delegation will move it for us, but it could be because of the climate, it's going to be a problem. So I'm going to continue looking to see if I can help get someone to help us to do this too. But I don't want you not to, advocate for me, Palm Beach County School District. I just don't know what's going to happen when we get to Tallahassee, or this gets to Tallahassee, whether they'll put it in the bottom drawer or something and not really pay attention anymore. And so I'm going to be working on trying to find some other opportunities for mine, and I share that with all of us here because we're in a different place. And the second thing I want to ask about, and probably to Mr. Vargas, my secretary is asking me every day if I'm going to Tallahassee for Palm Beach County Day. So I don't know how that's going to work for us this year, and I would like to know how we're going to, do we have a plan as a district? Are we going to be traveling together? Are we going as a board? Because once before, we all kind of went together. We had people assigned to us to take us to see the different legislators. And so I don't know who's accompanying us. So are we going to get together and get that organized so that I can make reservations to go and other board members so that we'll know exactly what's going to happen? So do we have a plan to meet and strategize before we ever leave Palm Beach County to go to Tallahassee to do all these things that we're talking about?
Mr. Vargas, will you go ahead and take that question, please?
Gladly, sir. Yes, ma'am. So we circulated an email, and Ms. Rita Solnet has taken the lead in charge on Palm Beach County Days for us. I do believe that we have Ms. Solnet on the line, and at this time, Ms. Solnet, can you address the Palm Beach County Days setup and some of the information that we've circulated to this point.
Actually, I don't have any more information than what Palm Beach County sent us. And traditionally, this is really done by Capital City. They coordinate the meeting. So I see Ron nodding his head, so I'm going to pass the baton to Ron on that, if you don't mind. As far as setting up a meeting, I think that's Mr. Bogus and the superintendent will set up a meeting to discuss what messages you want to deliver to the legislators. And now I'll turn it over to Ron.
Thank you, Ms. Solnit.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Ms. Solnit. Yeah, so Palm Beach County Days is still somewhat under development. We certainly do assist with individual meetings for members as they decide to come up, but I think that there's still a significant amount of groundwork that's still under consideration at the local level as far as what sort of programming they're going to have for the day, and then we fill out individual members around what programming the board members would like to attend. So the bottom line is, I believe it's too early to start making final plans, but it's on the radar screen, and we're going to circle up Ms. Solnit as well as Mr. Bogus and come up with some recommendations as the county starts to finalize what their part of the day is going to look like, because they really organize the day and then we build on top of that.
Mrs. Andrews?
So just to follow up, if we want to go, because we've been going and we know it's very valuable to be there, can we just go ahead on and begin that process to know that you all are going to get back with us and make sure that we're prepared when we go? Is that the thought process here?
Yeah, let me help out here. So yes, we can work with individual board members and with the board office to start setting up those travel arrangements. We know the dates. My recollection is in years past, the schedules and all that were pretty tailored to the individual board member. So I don't envision that we need to convene a workshop or a board meeting, but we can work one-on-one, and those that are interested in making the trek to Tallahassee, we'll make sure you have a productive visit.
Ms. Brill?
Thank you. So I have a few comments. First of all, I do want to commend Mr. Bogus. This is the cleanest looking platform that we've had in a long time. I used to complain about the multiple pages, so I do like that it's more concise. I do still want to get, and I know you sent us something that we couldn't print, the list of the bills that are out there that impact education, so that we could have it before we meet with the delegation next week, just so that we have it with us. I know that there are certain bills that we may not support. There's some that I want to pay more attention to, such as House Bill 51, the required instruction in the history of the Holocaust and history of African Americans. I want to make sure that the content is something that we feel comfortable with. But I also know from experience, and I think I was the first one to go to Palm Beach County Day on my own, and then we started going as a group. It's not always the most effective time for us to be lobbying for school board issues. I think that we can join with the county on local control. I think that's going to be a common theme through all of our different entities, but I think we should also think about going up separately, and perhaps even if we could do it as a virtual meeting, share our platform with Miami-Dade and Broward and see if we have some common ground, and maybe our 3 districts can go up on a separate date and really push our education agenda, because I just feel that when we go up there for Palm Beach County Day, they're hearing from all the different groups, from the firefighters, from the county, and they don't really pay a whole lot of attention to the school board issues. So I just want to put that out there for another. I'd like to have a discussion on that at a future meeting on how we can coordinate with the other large districts. We can invite others in as well and zero in on the mutual items that we want to push through.
Dr. Robinson?
Thank you. So just a couple of things, and I'll go back to my request. So the first thing is under the mental health services, it says social workers on contract. And I'm still not clear, Mr. Bogus, why on contract is there. Did you get clarification after our last conversation?
The on-contract was to identify those that would be working with our schools, and so the identification of the on-contract was with the Palm Beach County School District.
Okay, so it would be my suggestion that we remove the words on contract, because what that says to me is that we would by definition, we're saying social workers have to be contracted out. Not that I think that that's a bad thing, but I would like to have wiggle room if we were to bring social workers on board. I mean, so that's just a little hang up that I want to address. And then under the appropriations, so the 397,000, this is another issue. It doesn't say that this is for West Tech, so I want to be clear that this appropriations request is for West Tech, but it doesn't say that. That's my problem. So I want to know.
I believe there may be an updated version, Dr. Robinson.
It's an updated version? Okay.
There was a handout.
Oh, everybody saw it with me? Oh, y'all added that to the, okay. Thank you. All right.
Yes, ma'am.
See, I thought we were just killing trees. Okay, so very good. So then I would just formally offer an amendment to add the local history project and the oral history project to our legislative platform under appropriations request for historic Roosevelt. That's a motion.
I have a second. Second by Mrs. Whitfield. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you.
We go to that, General Counsel, or do you need to go back to the main motion again? We're good to go. Okay. That'll take us to BD2. Super. I just asked the General Counsel. She said do we need another vote on the main motion?
On the main motion?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. BD2?
Okay, I believe we're at
I'm sorry, not BD2.
policy HR.
P3.
HR.
P3, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I got to refresh. Sorry. Yep. I'm sorry, I'm refreshing my computer here.
Would you like me to read your recommendation? Can you see that?
I recommend the board approve the job description as submitted.
Motion by Mrs. Whitfield, second by Dr. Robinson. Discussion, Dr. Robinson.
Thank you. I just pulled this to request that we add under qualifications 3 years clinical experience preferred. So this is a person that we're asking to be like the all things around coordinating mental and behavioral health, including looking at accountability, but also addressing some of the state requirements and so forth. In terms of being the go-to person for people who provide clinical services in our schools, they need to have some clinical background themselves. I would actually want it to be required, but I also understand the job market, so I want to add 3 years clinical experience preferred to the qualifications. That's a motion.
We have a second. Second by Mrs. Andrews. Any discussion? Mr. Superintendent, do you have any comments on that change to this?
No, I think I accept the amendment. Thank you.
All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. EOL.
Okay, these next two policy items, I just want to explain. I have a revised recommendation. There are revised versions of these policies attached to the agenda, and the revision's really the title. We wanted to be consistent, and as we work on our policies to go beyond just COVID-19 to communicable diseases, that's what's going on here. So that requires me to read a different amendment than what you're going to see on the board docs. I'll read it now. I recommend the board continue the public hearing to approve adoption of the proposed revisions to policy 2.065 entitled, policy 3.82 entitled Employee Protocols in Response to Communicable Diseases, including Respiratory Virus Outbreak, Epidemic, Endemic, or Pandemic.
Motion by Mrs. Whitfield, second by Dr. Robinson. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
Okay. I recommend the board continue the public hearing to approve adoption of the proposed revisions to policy 2.065 entitled Visitation Protocols on District Property in Response to Communicable Diseases, including Respiratory Virus Outbreak, Epidemic, Endemic, and Pandemic.
Motion by Mrs. McQuinn, seconded by Vice Chair Brill. Discussion? Ms. Brill, then Mrs. McQuinn.
Thank you. So I spoke to Mr. Burke about this policy. I had to just look up where the lines went to. I am concerned about, in the new version, it's line 139. Visitors are not permitted to bring flags, signage, placards, posters, banners, bundles, or other large objects to district meetings. I know we discussed the intent. I thought we would tweak it a little bit before, because sometimes people come, even not in a presentation, they'll come and bring a giant check, or, presenting it to the district, or the students have, a contest and they'll bring, the poster boards with them outside of a regular presentation. So I was trying to think of how we could word it where it would work, and I was thinking, and I'm not going to make the motion yet, but that if we added to the end of the line where it says, or other large objects to district meetings unrelated to the matter being addressed. I don't know if that works, but then that also may cause problems with what we've had before. My concern is that there have been times when people bring charts and they bring information that I find useful. So I don't know how we can tweak that paragraph, and I don't know if we have to adopt the policy and then have staff bring it back for revision, but I'm just really uncomfortable with us just saying that nobody can ever bring that to our meetings.
Mrs. McQuinn?
Thank you, and there are two parts that I would like to address. The first is, I understand that what school police is having to deal with right now is very difficult, but I'm not comfortable with that M, which is line 139 and 140. I'm simply not comfortable with it being there. So that's the first. The second is, and it's not asking for a change, but it's making a clarification for, like, for example, when Dr. Robinson asked for what emergency actions our superintendents have taken. If you look at lines 149 to 154, I think it will be relatively easy to just give a list for us, and then, of course, the public, if they want it, when it says the superintendent shall inform the board, which you've done, of any exercise of delegated authority pursuant to this policy prior to implementation. Certainly that's been done. Additionally, the superintendent shall also notify the board of such action at the next special or regular board meeting. So there's no action that has been taken nor can be taken without us having advance notice and then followed up with notice publicly. So I really I'm going through that to make it very clear that there's no action taken that is not publicly acknowledged.
Ms. Brill?
So then, to piggyback on what Mrs. McQuinn has said, I don't know if we want to have more discussion, but I would make a motion to remove lines 139 to 140, which is the line M about visitors. Even though I understand what school police is going through, I just feel that it's a limitation that's beyond what I feel comfortable with.
There's a motion by Ms. Brill, seconded. Yes, go ahead, Dr. Rums.
Thank you. So my question is, and I'm sorry, Chief Alexander, because I was supposed to meet with Chief so I could better understand where this was coming from, and I canceled for whatever reason, but it seems to me that whatever school police needs to do must be codified someplace else without us saying that you can't bring flags, signage, placards, and all that, right? I mean, I object to this as well. I mean, I objected to it when I first heard it. I was just trying to defer to Chief, but have we looked at whether or not school police would be able to address whatever concerns they're trying to address with this suggestion? Is it codified elsewhere so that they would be able to do it? And I think that's a question for General Counsel.
Before the general counsel weighs in, the superintendent has a comment. Go ahead, Mr. Superintendent.
Well, I believe the answer to that question is no. So General Counsel, correct me later if that's not the case. So before we throw out this language or notion, I think that's an important point, Dr. Robinson. You know, we have a policy 1.03 for board meetings. I think there is a safety concern here with flags or poles or sticks that could be waved around and poke somebody in the eye. There could be offensive material. I understand the need that we may have the big check for a presentation or people that are invited as guests to present. I feel like that's maybe a different set of rules other than just public speakers. So if this language is not hitting the mark, you know, this is just our policy to the visitation during these outbreaks. So I kind of agree. I think it seems like this is something we need to be prepared to deal with in any condition. And I know we're slated to come back to the board with policy 1.03, and that might just make sense that I work with school police and Mr. Bogus to propose some language there that we try to tighten up to deal with some of the exceptions that were mentioned here this evening and deal with it on that front.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I wasn't looking, so I got 5 hands up. I'll start with you, Ms. Brill, since you're the closest, and I'll work my way down.
Thank you. So I'm actually going to withdraw my motion because I didn't pay attention to thanks, Mr. Burke, to the actual name of this policy. So I think maybe we need to do something with our board meeting policy later to bring back to address the concerns that the chief has. But since this policy, as Mr. Burke just indicated, specifically has to do with visitation during these outbreaks, I'm okay with it. So I'm withdrawing my motion.
Okay, so I saw Mrs. Whitfield, Ms. Ayala, and Ms. McQuinn. I'm sorry. Whichever one of you want to go first, go for it.
Oh, you know I want to. First of all, I know that we cannot understand. We can't understand what school police has to do. Only Mr. Barbieri could do that, having himself been a police officer. I do know as a school administrator, we've often put ourselves in harm's way, physically. A pencil can be a weapon. And a principal many, many years ago at John I. Leonard, Luke Thornton, said, you can't legislate common sense. So we need to do something, and I don't know what it is. I don't want this in here right now as is. And remember that this came to us without really an opportunity to look at it ahead of time and to ask questions. So I won't vote to keep this in here if that's what we're doing right now.
Mrs. Whitfield and Ms. Ayala, either one of you go ahead. Fight it out.
I just wanted to ask if we could have Chief explain a little bit more about what we're trying to solve. I think if the superintendent's okay with that, I think it might be helpful to clarify.
Yeah, I'll invite Chief Alexander up, but before that, I think one of the problems we were trying to solve was people bringing in political propaganda, political flags, placards. Or potentially, maybe we could insert a word there if we want to define that further. But I think we're just trying to. Chief, why don't you go ahead and elaborate on the problem we're trying to solve?
Yeah, I think context is really important with this, and understanding that we're looking out for the safety of everyone here, not just us and the role we have in ensuring a safe and efficient meeting. It's for everyone that's a participant here. Fundamentally, the way we look at this is visual rights and safety. You know, those are really the primary issues that we're talking about relative to our meetings. And so the language we looked at, is fairly common throughout our research and looking at what other groups look at, public groups look at, in terms of trying to create reasonable guidelines to ensure that people can participate and be safe and be seen and understand what's going on. So that's the context behind what we brought to you. And again, it's always subject to tweaking, looking at whether we're being overly broad or too specific. So we're doing the best we can to balance everything when we bring this to you.
Questions for the chief? Ms. Ayala?
Thank you for calling him up. I was going to request that. Because for me, this piece of it, I understand and we've seen firsthand the concerns that exist, right? It's not just messaging and profanity or expletives or anything like that that could be on it, but it's also the potential for acts of aggression or physical violence against anyone in the room. But how do we balance that with, protecting free speech and also respecting the rights of those who are employees or the union bodies that represent them to come in and display any kind of signage like my colleagues have been discussing? Is what's the balance there to make sure that we are conducting our meetings in a safe environment, but that we're allowing appropriate and supplemental stuff to be coming in while not making you and your officers' jobs harder trying to scope out for where anything could be coming from?
And I think in terms of expression, obviously, we could create criteria that are specific to presentations. And we'd want to make sure it's appropriate, that it's safe, and it's done in the appropriate manner. I'm just suggesting there's a possibility of developing those guidelines somewhere else relative to that issue.
Go ahead, Ms. Whitfield, then Dr.
Thank
Robinson.
you. So the biggest concern that I have with not passing this tonight is that it takes us a month and a half to get anything done. And this is an issue you have had for months. And so not including this in, which is really just a temporary policy, means that we're prohibiting you from doing what you were trying to do all this time. So I would like to pass it tonight because it is temporary, and I do understand that it's not ideal and that we may be inhibiting some level of expression, but I think we're still trying really hard to be respectful of everyone's free speech. We allow them to say a whole lot of stuff to us publicly and on TV, which sometimes I wish we didn't. But I think that this is just temporary and that we need to do it now so we can help you.
Dr. Robinson.
So there is still something I feel like I don't understand, that I feel like I can't get the clarity I need in public. So I need to keep my next one-on-one with you. But I'm going to go ahead and support it as is. I'm going to operate in one of my favorite sayings, an abundance of caution, meaning, supporting what the chief is recommending, even though I have some reservations, and maybe that's where that balance is that we need to find. So thank you.
What if we just limited the size and said you can't bring any of this stuff that's larger than 12 inches by 12 inches, so you don't have huge signs and placards and people with flags on poles? Would that give you the protection that you think we needed? You just limit the size of these things?
I think
somebody come in here waving a flag that's big as that one over there, and that's going to be in everybody's way. But if we say it can't be larger than 1 foot by 1 foot, then they're kind of, if they want to hold a little sign in front of them, they're not,
Yeah, I think the concern with some of these, and I agree it's not specific here, and I've seen other language relative to sticks and poles that is very much, directed towards, the issue of a standalone sign versus a sign that's on a stick. So to your point, absolutely. What's our concern? It's that everyone can see, it's peaceful, it's orderly, because when someone does this and there's someone behind you, then it creates unnecessary conflict that we're having to contend with as the meeting goes on. So your point, that's certainly a compromise that I think is reasonable under the circumstances, that it's probably not going to create a barrier. It's not going to create as much contention amongst folks who are in the audience as we have potentially even more contentious issues that develop that we haven't even foreseen. So it absolutely is a compromise that allows for some expression, at the same time limits the degree to which someone may block the vision of someone else or create conflict.
General Counsel, you say you need to clarify something?
Yes, I just wanted to clarify for the board that if you recall, what was originally coming up for adoption was this similar policy with a different title. So because the board is making what is it's a material change in changing the title, this policy is coming back for adoption. So tonight, if there's revisions that you want to make, you can make those revisions. It's coming back for adoption in December.
Okay.
If that helps.
All right. Ms. Ayala?
Thank you. I was going to try to clarify that. This is an emergency policy, so there's time to come back and get more nuanced on what comes back to us. So thank you for hearing us out.
Ms. McQuinn?
I just have a question. So it does automatically sunset? No?
No,
So this is
not
forever?
an emergency policy.
This is
permanent, right?
Go ahead, General
This-
Counsel.
This is the permanent policy. And it was going to come up for adoption tonight. So it was going to come up for adoption as a COVID-19 policy. But on Mr. Burke's recommendation to get alignment, to bring us into the future, to align all of the policies, the titles have been changed to communicable disease policies. So because of that title change, the adoption will occur in December rather than tonight, if that clarifies it for the board.
Mrs. Whitfield?
So looking at it now, I was looking at the old version. So looking at the new version, I think the confusion is really, if it's just our visitation protocols on district property, we should just leave it at that and take out the line 1, 2, and 3 that say in response to communicable diseases, including virus outbreak, Just, this is our policy. Because if it's really going to be just the policy, that's why I was under the impression it was temporary as well. Because I'm hopeful that this communicable disease nightmare we're currently in is not forever. So I think if it's just visitation policies, then we should just stop it there. And that would make it a lot clearer.
Dr. Robinson, then Ms. Burrow.
Thank you. So I just want to point out that the item says adoption of proposed revised policy. But the other thing is, I think that my fellow board members bring up some very good points about how this could possibly be redone. And so maybe we should essentially scratch the whole thing and bring it back as soon as possible, reworked. Because, I mean, I would like staff to look at whether or not it should just be visitation protocols, or if it needs to be specifically about visitation protocols when we have some kind of communicable disease crisis going on. Maybe that's the point. I'm not really certain. And then the other issue is the issues of safety that Chief is bringing up could be tweaked. Or actually, that could be done even if we take it as a preliminary today, then those tweaks could happen between now and the next read, between now and the adoption. So that would be my suggestion.
General Counsel.
And hopefully legal won't consider it a substitute change.
I just want to make sure that the board is looking at the proposed revised policy, okay? And so the proposed revised policy, from what I'm looking at, says visitation protocols on district property in response to communicable diseases. And so that was in the place of the COVID-19. And Mr. Burke, at the beginning of his remarks, amended his recommendation. So I wanted to make sure that was clear to the board. So his amended recommendation was that this come back for adoption in December. And the reason for that is if it doesn't occur in that fashion, then the policy won't come back. We'd have to start all over again, and it won't come back until March if we're going to start the policy work all over again, just so the board understands.
So just so I'm clear, so we can make any changes we want this evening to this policy, and then it'll still be on the agenda for December.
Correct.
And if we don't do that, we're not going to be able to get this policy before us again until March. Okay.
Correct.
All right, Ms. Burrow.
So I just want to reiterate my concern. I'm fine with adopting this the way it is because I know, and having it come back in December, I would not want to take out the first 3 lines only because I think that we may need to, well, we definitely need to tweak our general meeting policy and visitation policy. And that's where I think that we're going to look to the chief to help Mr. Burke figure out the language of what can be brought to a meeting and what can't. But I'm fine with going ahead with this under the circumstances.
Ms. Ayala?
I have a question on property. Since folks protest with signs outside, what is property? Is it entering, or is it the entire space that surrounds the building?
Relative to this particular policy, and is there a line specifically that we're talking about that language?
I mean, the word property is like in 16 places. Some it says entry into property, and some it just says property.
I think it's a legal question. I'll hazard it to mean anything that is considered district property.
That's correct. It's district property.
I have a follow-up.
Go ahead, Ms.
So will this stop people from being able to have the signs out front?
No, I think, and again, I could be corrected here, on the lines that we're referring to, I think we're pretty specific to district meetings on line 140.
For entry, okay.
So the general counsel may disagree with me on that, but I would suggest it's just for district meetings.
Correct. It says in here, it says banners, bundles, or other large objects to district meetings.
Okay, thank you.
General Counsel, let me ask you a question. We're going to modify 1.03. Is there going to be confusion between this and 1. We could have a meeting that has communicable disease stuff on it with a lot of other stuff. Now we have 1.03 that governs school board meetings, and we have this one that talks about if people are here for communicable disease, but we may have that on the same agenda, right? So how do we make sure there's not a conflict from what we'll do in 1.03?
Well, this section would cover district meetings across the board. So whether it's school board meetings, I mean, you could put the same language at 1.03. What I'm hearing is that maybe there's a preference to just have this language in 1.03 relating to school board meetings only, but this would apply to district meetings.
Well, I think that we should take it out of here and put it in 1.03 because a meeting's a meeting, whether they're coming here for this issue or that issue or whatever issue, it should be clear in 1.03 what they can do and what they can't do at a district meeting. So, everything else is fine in here, but to have these restrictions on what they can bring in, that should be definitely in the regular policy because it can cover anything. So we should probably pull that line out. No offense, Chief, but I think it needs to be in our other policy, which we're going to get to, so that it's clear, so there's no confusion later, because we may want to do something different in 1.03, and now we're stuck because we have this one that appears to be in conflict. General Counsel?
Well, this would cover school board meetings, so it wouldn't be in conflict.
But it doesn't say that. It says policy visitation protocols on district property due in response in response to communicable diseases. We may have a policy that's not in response to communicable diseases. So are you saying this policy would govern that meeting? Because this one specifically says that visitation protocols on district property in response to communicable diseases, including whatever. We could have another meeting that has nothing to do with communicable diseases, and is this policy going to govern what people can bring into the room with them?
Well, no. So, this policy covers us through the period where there's a communicable disease or an outbreak or an epidemic in place. So this would cover any district meeting during that time period.
Okay. So it's any kind of meeting. They don't have to be specifically here to discuss a mandate of some type or some kind of protocol. It's just
Correct.
Any meetings that take place like over the last 3 months, this would be, okay.
Correct.
And is there some declaration of when that ends? When that period ends, so we know that we're not governed any longer by this policy?
When we're no longer covered under some sort of outbreak, pandemic, epidemic, that's when it wouldn't be in effect.
Okay. All right. I'm not comfortable with this policy, but Dr. Robinson?
So, okay, the way I understand how this conversation is rolling, I think that we should approve this so that Chief has what he needs in policy to minimize disruptions. But at the same time, the way I'm processing this, there needs to be like an overhaul of policy. So this not just applies to board meetings or meetings. This applies to visitation at any school campus or any district property. I mean, tell me when I'm wrong, because this is how I'm reading it. And it applies when there's been an outbreak, epidemic, endemic, or pandemic determined by authorized public health agency, right? So it would end when the authorized public health agency says it's over, right? But in my head, that this would go as a subpart of a visitation policy. Like, I mean, that's just the way I process it. But, so I think that we brought up a number of points for tweaking. But I would ask that we call a question on this and allow this to move forward, and then knowing to expect some reworking of policy to address all the board's concerns.
All right, the question's been called. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. General Counsel, anything else on this policy?
I don't believe so.
All right. That takes us to, Mr. Superintendent, do you have anything? Because I have board discussion item.
No, sir. That completes our agenda.
We're on board discussion item BD1, Mrs. Whitfield, Student Caucus Task Force.
Thank you so much. So I wanted to briefly bring this up. I have been mentoring a student named Amanda at Atlantic High School, and she is hands down amazing. I just absolutely adore her. I think she is so smart and just has so much to contribute to the school district. And it brought me back to thinking about our conversation last year with our student government rep, talking about having a group of students on like an advisory board. So what I would propose is that we as a board consider implementing this. I know it's something that we talked about, so we can start hearing student voices. The format that I had imagined would be a way that we could do it within our framework we already have, is that at a future meeting, we come back and create a student advisory board, just like all the rest of our advisory boards. Each one of us gets to appoint a person from our district or wherever we choose within the district, a high school student. Also include the student government rep so they have an opportunity to participate. And then a great idea that Mr. Tierney had when I talked about this was adding in one student from alternative education to be appointed by the superintendent. That would give us an odd number of 9, and I think that would be a good group. And then whatever staff members assigned to it, bring forward the hot topics of the day in education to the student government panel and have them report back to us on what they think. Because I think we are missing that student voice. And I know we talked about it last year, and then nothing's really come of it. So I wanted to talk to my fellow board members and see what you all think about developing an advisory board specifically for students.
Mrs. Andrews, then Ms. Ayala.
Yeah, and maybe Mrs. Ayala is going to help me because apparently our student rep did some work and Ms. Ayala did too. So actually, what happened?
Thank you. Yeah, I was going to circle back. I think one of the first things I brought up when I got on this board was my idea for a student advisory committee, and then Dr. Fenoy and this former student rep kind of went back and forth on it, and nothing materialized. So I wanted to ask the superintendent through the chair kind of an update on where staff may have been with any discussions that you were aware of, or where that was at, because I know it turned from an idea, the way I iterated it, to a student government situation, which I didn't agree would be reflective of the need for accessibility for our students, right? Because SGA is its own thing already. This was for the students that need a place to have their agency represented. So if we recall that, and thank you, Mrs. Whitfield, for bringing this back up, just wanted to kind of, if you can share anything on that update. Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm not aware of any progress in this area, but I would say with all board advisory committees, it starts with a policy. So if that's something the board would like to see, we have consensus there, then I could work with Mr. Tierney and Ms. Bernard and Mrs. Bernard and maybe draft something. We have several advisory committees. We've never had one just for students. And any thoughts about the composition and all that, it's helpful to hear your thoughts.
I think we owe it to go back to the I mean, the pandemic hit in the middle of while that young man was trying to get this done. I think we owe it to him to see if he's done anything. Obviously, Dr. Fenoy's not here to tell us what was done. Before we make any decisions to move forward on something else, give me a chance and let me try and contact him and see if he made any, he was trying to set something up that would be representative, and I don't know exactly what he and Dr. Fenoy discussed, but can we just hold off from taking any kind of action? I'll try and get to him before the next meeting and find out if anything was done with respect to putting some kind of plan together on student representation. Dr. Robinson.
Thank you. I'm in support of that. I'm thankful that Ms. Whitfield brought this back up. I do think we have to figure out how to hear student voice, but in addition to the young man's recommendation and the former prior recommendation from Ms. Ayala and now Ms. Whitfield, I asked that we contact maybe Council Gray City Schools because, in their conferences, I didn't see it this year, but the one before, they had specific sessions on hearing student voice. And I think that some school districts, I think Boston in particular, I think the student votes on the board, right? I could be wrong on that. But, we have these other advisory committees, like I would like maybe to consider having a student or two or maybe more on academic advisory. I mean, I would like for us to explore all the different possibilities on bringing student voice to us so that we can be responsive to what we learn from them.
Ms. Brew?
Thank you, and I'm in agreement with what all of you have said. I do thank you, Mrs. Whitfield, for bringing that back, but something just entered my mind. I know we're probably thinking more towards the older students, but I think we need to find a way also, as we do create a policy, to bring the younger ones in. I have the opportunity every year to go help swear in the student government members at Hagen Road Elementary School. And these young students take a leadership role and really do make recommendations. So I do think we need to get the voices at every level as well. So, certainly there'll be some things that the older students will be able to participate in at a higher level, but let's not forget our little ones.
So, Mr. Superintendent, could you have one of your staff, possibly Mr. Vargas, reach out to Council of Great City Schools and see what they have in the way of structure on getting students more representative for the school board. And in the meantime, I will contact the young man that was here before and see what he put together, and then we can put all that information together for another meeting that's coming up. You okay with that, Mrs. Whitfield, since this was in Ms. Ayala? Okay.
That sounds good. We're happy to do the research, bring it back.
BD2, Ms. Brill, status of mask mandate.
Thank you. So first I want to start off by thanking Superintendent Burke, because I've been speaking to him about this, I guess it's almost 2 weeks now that we've been talking about the mask mandate and specifically looking at the science and the data. And I've spent the better part of the last week and a half learning a lot that I didn't know before. I want to share a little information with you because I do still have other recommendations. But what I had done was I pulled out our metrics, and I also went through a variety of sites, finally landed on the Florida Department of Health, which really I think is the best one, because I was in things like the New York Times, I was all over the place. One thing that wasn't mentioned is as of last week, 75% of people ages 12 and up in Palm Beach County have been vaccinated. And I will also tell you that for the adults, it is really easy. You can just jump online, no matter what your age is, to register to get the booster. So, I'm excited about that. Our positivity rate, because I've been rolling in the numbers, the 2 weeks prior, we were hovering in the 4%, and now we're at 3%. Our metric had stated that we wanted a COVID weekly positivity rate under 8%. So now we're at 3%. So that's great. Check that off. And as Mr. Burke said, the vaccines are available now to the children. The Pfizer vaccine is going to begin being administered tomorrow. So we know there's a vaccination out. I won't go into the conversations I've had with families about whether they're for or against it, but it's out there, it's available. When I was looking at our metrics, where I got a little hung up was where we had the indicator of the 50 cases per 100,000 per week. So I went through the site, and this site for the Florida Department of Health is from October 22nd to October 28th. And I looked at all the districts around the state, and I have to tell you, we're in really good shape. But I wanted to bring to your attention, Miami-Dade is at a 2.0 positivity, and they have 75.9 per 100,000. Broward is at 2.6 positivity, and they're at 64.7. And as Mr. Burke had indicated, we're at a 3% positivity rate, and we're at 59.1 currently, with the expectation that we're going to reach 50 at the end of this week. So having all this data, and with all due respect to the medical advisors that the superintendent has consulted with, I wound up reaching out to my doctors. And I reached out to doctor friends of mine and asked them, do you feel that waiting at that time the 4 weeks, now we're looking at the 2 weeks, do you feel that that's something that's going to make a difference, a true difference? Because we're trending down. The bottom line is the numbers are really good. We are trending down. I'm of the mind, and I don't know if you will all agree with me, but I'm at the point where I would like to say that we are going to make masks optional right away. And when I say optional, I did have a question for Mr. Burke. You mentioned having an opt-out. My vision of optional is like what happens when you go into a store these days. You know, you can put on your mask or not put on your mask. I'm really not looking for students to have to bring a note in to opt out, and that might be a conversation we have to have at another time. Same thing with our employees. I think it should be global for everybody. You know, obviously, our policies allow us to, or the superintendent, to make a change if it's needed, if the numbers change. But right now, we're in a really good place. It's continuing to be good. The families that I speak to, many of them are still going to have their children wear masks, but they're telling me when their children are taking a test in school, they would love for them to be able to take the mask off at their desk to be able to think more clearly. As we're heading towards the end of the semester, there are more exams, and others have said just while they're sitting at their desk, they would like that opportunity. So I don't think you're going to see a mass exodus and that everyone's going to show up in the schools without masks on, but I do think it's time. And if not this week immediately, then next Monday, rather than waiting the full 2 weeks. So I'm putting that out there to all of you.
Mrs. Andrews, then Dr. Robinson.
And I thank you, Mrs. Brill. And I must say that I really appreciate Superintendent Burke because he has been working with the pediatricians and the doctors. And they have really worked with us over these last few months better than ever before. I think we are doing better. I was so excited last night to see the little children getting their vaccines on television. It was a great thing. And I'm really happy to know that the School District of Palm Beach County will have these sites in our schools for those who truly want to get the vaccine, those little ones, 11 to 5, so that they can get them ASAP. I'm just thrilled that we did the things that we needed to do to keep the children safe. I mean, we can look at the data. Mr. Burke showed it to us. We looked at it with Dr. Alonzo and the team from the healthcare district from week to week to week. We have come a long way, and I think we're at a good place now. And as I spoke to Mr. Burke this morning, I said, you know, I saw that discussion item the other day, and we talked again today, and I said, you know, I don't want the medical doctors, the pediatricians to feel like we're abandoning them. And so he said, no, they don't feel that way because they're going to be with us regardless to whatever decision we make tonight. I certainly can go at this point in time and say for Monday we could be ready because I think we've done well, or I can still wait a bit because I just think that those that want to get the vaccine, it gives them a few days to get it since we're going to be giving the vaccines. And I'd like for parents that want to get their children the vaccine as quickly as possible. I want them to say, well, you didn't give me that much time. It's all happening so quickly. But I know that we're still encouraging people to do what's best for them. And we hear it here at every meeting that the parents know what's best for their children. But now that we're in a better place, I'm very flexible right now to do what's best based on the science, based on what we see, and based on the availability of the vaccine for the little ones.
Mrs. Whitfield?
I think Dr. Robinson wanted to go first. No? No? Okay.
I'm sorry,
so-
yes, I did call him Dr. Robinson.
Okay, well, I just, I get the hesitancy. I get the idea of wanting this to be over. I really do. I would also like this to be over as soon as possible. I'm ready for us to go to an opt-out. But I feel like the best true approach for public health is to wait till that November 15th. It's not what I would like to do in my own heart, and that's, but I think it's the best decision for the community. We are literally I'm getting texts from all my friends saying that they're getting vaccines for their kids this weekend. If we can get them another week or two to be able to develop immunity, I think we should take it. And I think that time is the time to be as prudent as possible. And we have worked so hard as a community, and we have really put ourselves out there trying to protect everyone. I feel like it's literally 12 days from today. We're not even talking 2 weeks. I like that the doctors are saying this. I think we can fully, I think we can make it another 12 days, everyone. I know it's frustrating and hard, but I think we can do it. And when we get there, I'm hopeful that people will continue to wear the mask if they're not fully vaccinated, just because they want to take care of each other. That's been my goal this whole time, is that we all care about each other enough to wear a mask to make sure that we're protecting those around us, if we are able, if we can handle it. And then for everyone else who can't, that's okay too. We're going to get there, and I think this is the best course of action. So just thinking about it from a public health perspective, I say wait 12 more days.
Dr. Robinson?
Thank you. So clearly I've been looking at this data for, a year and a half or more. And I'm thankful that we did put the very, very, very well-researched metrics in place. And the comment about Mr. Oswald preparing for his MCAT, yeah. I mean, seriously, at least in epidemiology, he's ready to take the test. I mean, so, but when we first established these metrics, honestly, I wanted to be even more cautious. And this is what I want to be really clear about. So thankfully, children tend to, when they get infected, tend to have lower viral loads than adults. So thankfully, they tend to be less infectious and less likely to infect others. The problem is when children get infected that, one, they can spread it to family members who, if they're high risk, can die. And you may or may not recall me saying a year ago that that's why we had to be so very cautious, even though thankfully the children are not as great at risk as adults. But I wish I had pulled this statistic. I saw on, I think it was PBS, the thousands of children who have lost one or both of their parents during the pandemic. It was national data, right? But it was a startling number, and that's what I hope to prevent, right? In addition to preventing the multi-system inflammatory syndrome in children and all of its potential consequences. So when we came up with these metrics, when these metrics, these, as I say, very well-researched metrics were presented, I was actually good with holding to those metrics for 2 weeks. When the pediatricians who see children every day, now, it's a different impact, when you're seeing children who are sick. And they said that they wanted us to hold for 4 weeks. I do believe that our caution has contributed to the numbers coming down significantly. I believe we saved lives, and I'm thankful for that. I am supporting Mr. Burke's recommendation that we hold until we see the numbers November 12th. I'm expecting that we will meet the 2-week mark then. But I want to tell you, if I was being really, really pure, I would say we needed to wait until mid-December, or actually later, after children, 6 weeks after the first vaccinations, because that's when you're going to get your full immunity, right? So we're doing a balancing act here. I know we're all tired, and we want this thing to go away, but what I don't want to do is to do something that could cause us to go backwards at all. Now, the other thing that I need, in order to support the 2-week recommendation, is the assurance that we will get at least weekly updates on the data from the school nurses on tests and the number of positive cases, as well as looking at the 18 and under reports from Department of Health, as well as absenteeism, because we need to look at leading indicators. You know, I am prayerful that we are at the end of this thing, but there are people who understand disease transmission better than I that expect that we're going to have an uptick. How high it goes, in large part, is going to depend on the starting point. And so if those numbers come down some more, when it blips up, there's going to be less illness than if we allow it to blip up at this point. So I'm fully in support of the 2 weeks. I think it's a fine balance. It's not pure public health. And, you know, Dr. Alonso, by the way, was quoted in the paper as saying that she really wanted to hold until we met the she was talking about the county, the CDC definition of low transmission. We went with the moderate transmission. And so I don't want us to think that we're out of the woods. We are not out of the woods, right? And so, you know, and just if anyone cares, trust me, my grandchildren come over, everybody's masked up. We're fully vaccinated. I'm hopeful they'll get the vaccine, right? So we also need to be clear that people who are vaccinated can get infected, right? So what you're doing is you're playing the odds. All this is playing the odds. And so even the mask, you know, nothing's 100% in medicine. So we're talking about these layers of protection. I think that we have done a good job in protecting our students and their families by having the mask mandate and the improvement in the ventilation. Oh, you know what? I need to say this. I was told that we have MERV 13 in all our schools now. Listen, that is an accomplishment. Okay. So we have layers of protection, and I'll stop talking. I'm good with Mr. Burke's recommendation, and nothing less. But I need the data. I need the data at least once a week.
Ms. Ayala.
Thank you. I agree wholeheartedly with Dr. Robinson. I support the superintendent's recommendation because, as many people remind us in these chambers, we are not. Most of us are not physicians, but what we are people entrusted with protecting the students of this district. And when you look at the possibility that we may not be done with COVID because variants are coming out, that the holidays are coming up and students are going to be traveling and around others, we do not want to have come this far to only come this far. So I support what we shared with the community previously, which is sticking with the recommendations that the panel the superintendent put together gave us. I would not like to see us go before that and then end up in a worse situation in December. Secondly, I also feel it is my responsibility to give those parents who have been extremely cautious and who want to see their students as protected as possible the full chance to be protected against COVID-19. And vaccines are going to be available, I believe, beginning tomorrow. Then they have to wait 2 weeks, and then they wait 2 weeks after the second one. So this is not you get it and you're done. There is a period of time to get that additional protection. And I would not feel good with myself if I put some children in a position where they wanted to be vaccinated and they couldn't, and they're sitting next to their colleagues who may not have on a mask. So that is where I'm at with it. I support the initial recommendation brought forth by the superintendent at this time.
Ms. McQuinn?
Yes, and before we end, I know that Mr. Burke has his comments written tonight so that there would be no misunderstanding, so it might help for us to hear that again. But I do support waiting until November 15th because in a district this size, you have to communicate it. And in order for our schools and departments to be able to implement it, all the same, we need time for that communication. So that is the main reason that I am concurring with the 15th. I do, however, want to us to think about, and I don't remember which words Mr. Burke used, but with, I can do this, I know her name perfectly, Mrs. Brill. There's a big difference between opt-out and optional. I am in favor of optional because opt-out is a lot of work to monitor. So I am in favor of optional, but it doesn't mean that I would, throw myself on the sword for that. So, thank you.
Ms. Brill?
Thank you. So I can see that everybody feels more comfortable with the 15th. I am disappointed. I really would have preferred that we did it immediately, but I'm patting myself on the back because I think I prompted a lot of the action and push to get us to really look at where we're at. I was going to mention the same thing about the optional and opt-out. I do think that it puts a burden on our teachers and on our schools if we make the students bring in a note. I think come the 15th, it should be a very clean opt-out. Students can wear a mask if they choose, and same with employees or not, or various times during the day, have a mask on, sit, take an exam, take it off, but that we shouldn't be having our teachers, our administrators be mask police.
Dr. Robinson?
Thank you. So, I appreciate the sentiment. It's just not good public health. So let me compare it. So we're all familiar with the law requiring that you wear your seatbelt, right? So if you don't wear your seatbelt, you get in an accident, you get harmed. You don't harm other people necessarily. This is really more akin to texting while driving. So if you don't wear a mask, you're not just putting yourself at risk. You're really putting other people at risk. If we discuss how the mask, before we discuss how the mask protect the observer, if you will, from the wearer more than the reverse. And I still don't have a good way of making this make easy sense. But the point is if we just make it optional, then I think it loosens the restrictions too much for me to be comfortable with at this time. Now, I don't want teachers acting as the mask police. I think that they can loosen it a bit. They don't need to say, put up your mask, but they can walk by and tap them on the shoulder, and children should be able to take little breaks from having the mask on while in class. I think that the studies have proven that it is not as highly transmissible as we initially thought. And so I'm good with mask breaks, but I would also really like there to have to be an action. The parents have to take an action, meaning the mask opt-out, that would put other children at risk. Because that's really what we're talking about. The mask is not just protecting the child who's wearing it. It's really protecting the child looking at them or near them more so. And we have to keep that in mind, just like texting while driving. So,
Mrs. Andrews?
Yeah, I really do believe in the optional piece right now, and I think that's truly important. I have to say to Mr. Burke, you really did your homework with the pediatricians and the doctors, and they've been working hard with you, and I like that piece. And what makes me be flexible is because I really do want to give those other children the ability to get their vaccines. And so that time is going to be a good time for them. But as we're sitting here talking, when we decided to make it optional before when we were going to do this. We did it at the same time. We did it for the adults. And I know, Mr. Burke, you said you want to get with the union. Can you explain if we decide to do this on the 15th and we haven't really told the employees what's going to happen to them? Help me to understand that, because this will be big news coming out tomorrow. What about the teachers and the other employees? Can you help us with what are they going to be feeling if we've already kind of made this decision and we're leaving them out there?
Well, I had not finalized my recommendation or what I planned to carry out under my authority for the employees. I wanted to have the benefit of that conversation, sit down with the teachers union or other groups. So I'd like to hold on that. And as one good thing about planning for the 15th, it gives me a little time to work that out. We may have employees on different sides of the spectrum. Some that are ready to take the mask off because they have to speak for 8 hours a day, and others that may be driving a bus that want to keep their mask on. So anyway, I'd like to sort through that and come back, and I'll be sure to communicate with the board. The issue of returning to a parent opt-out, which satisfies the state emergency rule, right? That gets us back in line. I chose that because it's basically still the most restrictive measure we can have without having this prolonged potential legal battle. And I felt like there's value in that may help encourage behavior to promote the mask wearing. We had talked about strongly encouraged at one point, then we put the mandate in place, and I wanted to ease this back in potentially steps, because and I want to be careful with the physicians panel. They were pretty clear, right? They would like to have the 4 weeks. They agreed to 2 weeks. I did go a little step further tonight and say, look, I'm planning for the 15th. If we missed the metric by a couple numbers or something, I'm still planning to go for the 15th. And at that point, I cannot say I've got the backing of the doctors. And I was clear with the doctors that the board and myself, we may go a little further than you're comfortable with, but I just want to be really clear to honor that relationship and not misrepresent anything that they've opined on or given me guidance. So they've been very generous with their time. They've listened to us. They've provided guidance. And so where they are is they can live with 2 weeks, but they expect all the metrics to be met. Where I am is I feel like we're pretty much there. If I don't see anything dramatically go awry and a huge resurgence or something, that I want to carry out this plan as described earlier on the 15th, and then with the commitment that we're not done monitoring the data, the weekly updates, we can, I think, work that through. We may have to do a little work with the healthcare district to see what kind of information we can get from our nurses. I'm committed to that, and we also made that commitment to the doctors that because the doctors will tell you full well, as much as we like to think this is all over with, there's a very good chance it's not. And there may be other mitigation strategies that we need to partner on that go beyond facial coverings or what have you. So I really want to keep that relationship in place. It's been vital to us, and just thank them here publicly for their time. They're busy people, as you can imagine, especially during a pandemic. So for them to break away for an hour quite frequently, that's no small feat. So I hope that clarifies. I'd like to, give me a timeout on the employees. We'll communicate shortly. I need to have a few conversations there. And then otherwise, it's really gearing up for the 15th. And if the board feels very strongly that this opt-out versus just kind of completely optional, it would be helpful. I would like to have the benefit of knowing where the board stands on that as a group.
All right, so let me help the superintendent with this. Board members, if you're in favor of just student shows up at school, wears a mask. If he feels like it, doesn't have a mask on. If he doesn't feel like it, wears it during the day part-time, takes it off without any parent involvement whatsoever. If you're comfortable with a total, it's optional. Please raise your hand. You want the parents to have to sign a form? Raise your hand.
Mr. Chair, my hand's not raised yet for either one. So please say that more slowly. I'm way down here at the end.
One is parents have to sign something for the child not to wear a mask. The other option is parents sign nothing, the child comes to school and it's optional. Whether the child puts a mask on or not is totally up to the child and guided by whatever the family told them to do.
So yeah, I'm going to make clear that my vote will be based on what our superintendent has asked us to do,
Which is,
I've asked
the
for
paper.
the parent opt-out
Right,
was my
an
recommendation.
opt-out
So you
for-
have to
for
go
the time
through
being.
the trouble of writing a note. As I explained earlier, any notes, we've recorded those notes in our SIS system, so the 12,000 roughly people that have already submitted those will be honored. But yeah, there is a step here.
all right, so again, if you want the parent to sign something, raise your hand. Okay, it's four, so that's.
Okay.
Okay. I'm not in favor of the parents signing anything. I think that if we're going
Well,
to
I
make it
think-
optional, we make it.
I
I
think-
just my thoughts are that it makes it a burden for the schools. I mean, it's like if you have half the district opting out and the other half doesn't, somebody's got to keep track of that. And what's the point? I mean, if we're going to say the teachers don't have to police it, who knows whether the kid's got something in the office? The teachers have to have a list in their room that says that child has an opt-out sheet and this one doesn't. And I mean, what is the point? I mean, who's going to monitor it? It's like an impossible situation we're putting on our schools, again, making the principals the mask police, because that's exactly what we're doing. If the kid doesn't have an opt-out, then he or she needs to make sure that child puts a mask on. So I see no sense in making the principals and the teachers go through all that work, and God knows they have enough to do to help these kids catch up on COVID slide without having to police masks. Mrs. Whitfield?
Thank you. So to me, this is step one. Step one is, okay, we're going to go to the opt-out, see how things go. If everything goes okay, then we can go to step two, which is optional. So I really think we've done so much. And I don't want to wear a mask everywhere I go either, but I'm not ready to accidentally infect anybody. So I think this is just step one. And so we do this for a month, and then we revisit.
Mrs. Andrews?
You know, I've been monitoring the other districts and talking to the other superintendents too, as well as Mr. Burke. And this is why I feel the way I feel. I feel the optional is the way to go right now. I felt like is looking at and talking with my friends on the school board in Miami-Dade and Broward and some of the other counties. I've been doing that, and I'm just so happy we're where we are. But the parents have been in here, and they're talking about all these pieces. And I just know the schools are talking about all these pieces, too, of what they're having to keep up with. And I'm just happy to know our numbers are down. I know we're not out of this yet, but we are doing better than we've ever done before. So I really want to eliminate some of the burdensome of the paperwork on teachers and students. And yeah, I will wait, Mr. Burke, until the 15th, but I could have gone either way tonight because I've just been following it all over the state, as well as looking at what Ms. Brill has said and what you've been telling me, Mr. Burke. But I just want to kind of start relieving some of this back and forth with the schools and trying to keep up with all this bureaucracy and paperwork. You know, we don't know where we're going to be in a month from now, but we know where we are right now, and that's why I was worried about the teachers and the staff. So I'm just hoping that we're going to come together with all of this. I don't want it to be so many steps that people will say, make up your mind, do what you need to do.
Ms. McQuinn?
Thank you. So remember, I started with optional, too much paperwork. I want to explain why I want to support Mr. Burke's recommendation to us. Because he stepped out on a limb. He called a special meeting of his, I'm calling it his medical advisory committee, okay? He got our doctors to say, all right, I won't see patients for an hour, which is really giving up money out of their pockets. And he went so far as to say, I may not meet your metrics exactly, but this is what I'm probably going to do. I feel like I have to support that. So that is the only, I personally want optional, but I'm going to support the superintendent's commitment that he made today.
Ms. Brill, then Mrs. Andrews?
Thank you. So again, I mean, I'm not going to keep rehashing the same thing. I'm going to ask the superintendent to talk to other superintendents also to get their feel, because I am concerned about the paperwork burden, the monitoring burden. on our schools, and then just come back and let us know how that's going to be handled, because I don't want a student who's somehow forgot to bring in their note for us to say that they can't go to class because they don't have a note and they don't have a mask. And I'm worried about having those types of incidents occurring. I really want to make it as clean as possible. And I just also would ask, I know you're going to speak to the unions, but I really would hope that we make it optional for our employees as well. They're tired. And, many of them have been vaccinated and triple vaccinated, and they're ready. And if they want to wear a mask, they can.
Can I just make one more comment?
Ms. Whitfield and Mrs. Andrews and Dr. Robinson.
Okay, so just as a potential compromise, because I'm always looking for the compromise, I think that a kid who gets vaccinated this weekend is going to be protected in 6 weeks. That's my theory. And Dr. Robinson's, feel free to jump up. 2 shots. So 3 weeks from today, they get vaccinated this weekend. They get 1 in 3 weeks after that. Then that means 3 weeks after that, they're vaccinated fully, right? So 6 weeks, their immune system can develop, right? Yeah? Okay, so if that's true, then why don't we do opt-out on the 15th, and then 6 weeks from this weekend, we can go to optional, and I can live with that. Because I think that what I just want to do is give parents a shot to be able to get that vaccine in their children, and then if they did it this weekend and they really try and they're, whatever, we're really protecting them the best we can. And then we can go to optional 6 weeks from, today, tomorrow, whatever.
Oh, my God. Mrs. Andrews?
And I go back to Mrs. Brill, and as I said before, I had spoken to several superintendents and board members from across the state, so I would like for Mr. Burke to go back and check with them. But what I thought was very good is that your relationship with the doctors, the pediatricians and everything, they seem to know that we're almost there. And I think they understand that we're trying to talk to all of the parents, trying to get these kids back in play here. And that's why I loved it that we're actually going to be giving the vaccines for whoever want to take them. We can't make any of these little people take them, but if their parents want them to take the vaccine, that's a good thing. But I just think we're almost there, and I don't want to just keep expanding it because it looks like we're going way down, and I know that we're not there yet, but I really want to take the advantage of working with my fellow colleagues from across the state as they have made their decisions too, and they're looking at the data. Maybe we have different kind of criteria than they have, and I know some of them had a little less stringent than we had here in Palm Beach County, but we're all heading in the right direction all over the state. So I just really want to make sure that that we can get moving quickly with this, and I don't really want to burden the teachers and the principals, and I certainly want the employees to be able to have it optional for sure. That's why I asked the question again tonight of Mr. Burke. And I do support you, Mr. Burke, but I'm just thinking about the big picture and how I see it. We're all different up here.
Okay, let me try and land this plane before it runs out of gas. We've already made a decision that the majority wants to go with November 15th. That's decided. The only other decision was whether they can come to school without a parent's signature and take their mask off. That's been decided. The majority of the board wants that parent to sign something. So as far as I can tell, we are done with this discussion item tonight, correct? Great. Do you have anything else, Mr. Superintendent?
No, that's enough. That's enough. Thank you.
Do we have a motion to adjourn? Motion by Miss Ayala, seconded by somebody, please. Ms. Brill, on favor, opposed, motion carries 7-0. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
The scientific property of density, mass over volume.